Good morning, everybody, and please can I welcome everyone to this meeting of Cabinet on Wednesday, the 20th of November 2024, from the Walton Suite, Winchester Guildhall. The time is 9:33 a.m. My name is Councillor Martin Todd, Chairperson of the Cabinet and Leader of the Council. This meeting is live streamed from the Council's YouTube channel, and the recording will also be available after the meeting. Subtitles can be switched on, and advice on how to turn these on is set out online. Can everyone please ensure their mobile phones are on silent, and can I remind members to use their microphones? In the unlikely event that it is necessary to evacuate the building, the fire alarm will sound. Please follow all the instructions given to you by our team. Can I welcome members of the public to the meeting this morning? We will invite you forward when it is time for you to make your contribution. Turning to the agenda. The first item is apologies for absence. I think we have no apologies for absence. The second item is membership of Cabinet committees. We have no changes to Cabinet committees. The third item is disclosures of interest. Councillor Porter.
I am disclosing my interest as a county councillor. I don't think there's anything particularly relevant on this paper that is regarding it, but I don't have any pecuniary interest in any of that.
Thank you very much indeed. I also make the same declaration as a county councillor with a personal but not pecuniary interest. The fourth item is request from councillors to speak. I have Councillor Wallace registered on item 13, Councillor Lee registered on items 8 to 13, Councillor Horrell on items 9, 10 and 12, Councillor Godfrey on item 8, and Councillor Bolton on items 11 and 13. Thank you very much indeed. On next item is public participation. Mr. Tate has asked to speak on item 12 and is happy to speak at the time of the agenda item, which I think will be more productive for the debate. And Lynn Mellish is here from TACT. Thank you for coming, but doesn't wish to speak on any of the items. The next item is minutes of the previous meeting held on the 15th of October 2024, less the exempt minute on pages 7 to 14 of the agenda pack. Cabinet, are you happy to agree those minutes as a correct record of the meeting? Thank you. And item 7 is leader and cabinet announcements. Councillor Lerney.
Thank you, Leader. I'm pleased to say that we had a successful carbon neutrality open forum last night, where we announced that the council expects to have cut the carbon emissions it directly controls by 96% by the end of the 2024 financial year. In 2019, we set ourselves the extremely challenging goal of being a carbon neutral council in 2024, which at the time seemed a target that would be incredibly difficult to reach. So this is an amazing achievement which has been reached through embedding carbon neutrality throughout the whole council, and I would like to thank all our staff for helping us reach this point. We will continue working to remove the last difficult few percent, but will principally be concentrating on reducing the district carbon footprint going forward, where we will get more bang for our buck and we'll be able to continue going greener faster.
Thank you, Councillor Lerney. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Yes, I've got a few announcements to make. The first one is that at very long last we have received the green light to start work on the Buttercross in Winchester's High Street. Many months have passed since we sought permission to carry out work on the Buttercross to clean it, remove the weeds and grime that has built up over time. As an ancient scheduled monument, the council had to apply to Historic England for permission to do this, and we have been waiting some years to get the go-ahead. So I'm really delighted to say that we have now received the required permission. We have the budget put aside, and once we have appointed a contractor, we hope to start work either late spring or in the summer. Excuse me. As we all know, the Buttercross is an important landmark in our city and contributes to what makes our city high street really special. It will look so much better once it's had a clean, the stonework repaired and the pigeon deterrent put in place. Moving on from protecting our heritage to bringing us slap bang into the 21st century, I have further announcements to make regarding a set of programmes we are running to help new businesses improve retrofit skills and digital skills. And these are all being funded from the UK Shared Prosperity Fund that we received a few years back. The first is the Business Growth Factory. The programme is open to new entrepreneurs, startups and small businesses in the Winchester district, and it is being delivered by IncuHive. The programme will provide businesses with help and advice, such as the ability to identify target markets, effectively manage finances, and make successful investment pitches. There will be a mix of tailored support, expert-led mentoring and hands-on workshops to help participants make the most of the opportunities on offer and make sure they have the tools and insights needed to thrive in competitive marketplaces. The second programme is designed to help us all go greener faster. We are providing 2 new training courses for residents, businesses, house builders and community groups across the district to help them understand how to upgrade homes or premises to make them more energy efficient and climate change friendly. Retrofit 101 is an introductory tailor-made course for anyone wanting to learn about the fundamentals of whole house domestic retrofit and why it's important, and NOCN Level 2 in Understanding Domestic Retrofit is a 2-day course to further develop knowledge around retrofit, from creating a warmer, healthier household to saving money and reducing carbon emissions. The course can be undertaken online or in person at Base Point, which is up in Winnell in Winchester. And finally, I announced at last month's Cabinet that we had just launched a digital skills programme to help our residents improve their digital skills. The programme has been running for a month now, and we have seen a terrific uptake in individuals wishing to boost their employment opportunities or just growing confidence using laptops and computers, which are so essential in everyday life. The programme runs until the end of January, so there is still plenty of time to take part. If you know of anyone who would benefit from this training, please contact Work Advisor on 02381 550 223 or visit our website where there is more information available. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Porter.
Thank you. I'm very pleased to say that the local plan was submitted to the Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government for examination on Friday. The local plan sets out the City Council's vision and objectives for the future and the future development of the district outside the South Downs National Park. Excuse me, I'm going to have to go. Excuse me, which the National Park has its own local plan. So this is for Winchester City, the market towns, the villages and the countryside and the southern parishes. Following the most recent consultation in late summer, early autumn, the Council has prepared a summary of the main issues and full copies of all the feedback from the latest Reg 19 consultation. And these are available now for the inspector to view, and also members of the public can view these and all of the papers on our special local plan website, which is www.localplan.winchester.gov.uk. And it's all there. I've checked it and it's looking really clear for the public to read easily. The local plan will help us tackle the climate emergency, secure the supply of much needed affordable homes, ensure we use brownfield sites first, protect our natural environment, including the chalk streams and rivers, and it also makes sure that we get the infrastructure that we need to support the people living in those homes. Now the plan has been submitted, a planning inspector will be available to assess it and review it, and they will consider whether the plan has met the legal requirements and whether it can be go forward. It will be examined locally in a date to be confirmed in the future. So we're looking forward, in fact, to having that examination and to securing our local plan so that it's a Winchester City Council led plan for our district.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. And both the local plan and the achievement of a 97% cut in our directly controlled emissions are a huge achievement. And so if I could ask the Chief Executive to pass our thanks to everybody that's been involved in that. I also find it symbolic, given our sort of priorities of caring for our past but planning for the future, that we are able to announce a refurbishment of the Buttercross, as well as helping people with digital skills and other things to enable them to decarbonise even more on the same day. So yes, a very huge set of achievements, particularly on carbon and the local plan, and it would be appreciated if the officers involved could be thanked for everything that they've done. So moving to the next item, it's the General Fund budget options and medium-term financial strategy. Deputy Leader, would you like to introduce the paper?
Thank you, Leader. Unfortunately, somehow with the new technology, I've completely lost my notes. So this will have to be done on the hoof. But as every year, we set out the medium-term financial strategy in the autumn and work through budget options and the assumptions that on which we'll base the budget that will come forward in February. As we're all aware, I think local government finances have been under severe strain. We are in the fortunate position of not being as badly off as some other councils. But we suffer from setting a budget or trying to set the medium-term financial strategy at this stage, where every year for the last five years we've been promised a longer-term settlement, and every year the can is kicked down the road, and we are still waiting for the government settlement, which will be for 1 year this year. However, it seems more likely with the new government that we will have a longer term settlement from next year. But at the moment, we don't know the basis of that, and we can only assume, make the same assumptions we made other years, that the Fair Funding Review will include a reset of business rates, will include the end of the new homes bonus, and possibly even a negative revenue support grant where we pay the government money. Now, with this new government has promised more funding for local government, but they have made it very clear it will be on the basis of need. So it's really important that we work on the assumption that we won't be top of the list here. So having made those assumptions for the medium-term financial strategy, it leads us to a balanced budget for the next 2 years, but going into deficit from there on, and that reinforces the importance of our TC25 process to take £3 million out of the base budget. The report has several recommendations on base budgets and one-off costs, including funding for food waste, a £300,000 additional budget for homelessness, and the creation of a £1 million reserve for homelessness, given the unpredictability which the temporary accommodations pathway paper that went to Cabinet Housing Committee pointed out. So it's important that we are covered there. We need also in the recommendations to approve the increase in garden waste fees for next year, simply because that comes before the budget, and it is the standard inflation that all fees and charges will be charged. So that's a brief summary, Leader. Mrs. Keys is here and will no doubt be able to answer far more detailed questions than I can. And I'm happy to take questions and debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And before we do that, we have a couple of deputations from councillors. So Councillor Lee, I believe you wanted to comment on the general fund paper.
Yeah, good morning and thank you, Leader. There's no doubt that the previous governments have not looked after local government as well as it might, and as a result, we face significant financial pressures. But if this new government is serious about a mission-driven government with a desire to tackle the deep-rooted challenges we all face, then it needs to stop prevaricating and push real power out to the communities with financial resilience, empowering the local district councils and not wasting time tinkering with new structures. Otherwise, we will suffer more delays, more pain through order becoming disorder as new ideas for local government governance arrangements bed in. Time is of the essence. But I'd like to thank the officers for their work on the medium-term financial strategy. And I have a number of questions and points of clarification with suggestions for Cabinet. And forgive me for repeating some of those which were picked up at scrutiny. If the medium-term forecast, if the council is likely income and expenditure over the medium term using assumptions based on best knowledge, this must surely mean this includes the emerging new 2025-30 council plan. It's not clear to me that this is the case, especially as it is yet to be endorsed. So has the paper taken full consideration of the draft new council plan to reflect the priority outcomes of the council from the newly identified issues to be addressed over the life of the new council plan? And can I request that the Cabinet Recommendation 1 is amended to reflect this missing reference? Can I further request on page 37 that the background documents reference the version of the council plan being used to set the strategy against, so it is clear as to all the current essential assumptions? Similarly, there seems to be an omission at para 1.3, reference to the climate emergency, but no reference to the nature emergency, and the importance of resolution 2 to consider the impact of nature's recovery in all strategic plans, policy areas and decision-making processes. Surely this full council agreed motion must be fully considered for this important strategy. These interlinked emergencies are not an either or for decision-making process or cherry-picking of resolutions. So can I ask how the council intends to inculcate the important nature emergency considerations into our council business and this strategy? Next year, the county's local nature recovery scoping work will need to be taken forward in accordance with the Environment Act. What funding provision will be provided and how will we manage this requirement? No mention of this in the strategy. The environmental considerations of para 7 similarly have missed a key challenge, the nature emergency. And I'm sorry this is a broken record, but this repetition about prioritising nature can, if we're not doing it right, can lead to a substantial economic burdens for both this local authority, including GDP losses, increased management costs, and negative impacts on public health and infrastructure. So proactive investment in nature recovery is essential to mitigate these risks and promote sustainable economic growth. And the Green Finance Institute estimated that the deterioration of our natural environment could result in a 12% reduction in GDP. This underscores the profound economic implications of failing to protect and restore our natural habitats and consider that in our decision-making processes. So clarifying, including these missing aspects, along with all the other cost drivers, which are well laid out, thank you, will ensure there's the clearest picture of the challenges for Winchester City Council's financial position. In terms of a high performance culture of continuous improvement, that obviously is a must, and thank you to Councillor Cutler for outlining the TC25. And I therefore welcome the idea of a change specialist to help us do this and deliver. The TC25 efficiency programme for ongoing savings of £3 million a year is clearly important, but perhaps there will be too little room to manoeuvre to identify adequate future savings needed to mitigate risks of not realising these savings. So I wonder if the strategy provision for an Invest to Save programme with CECORN funding is needed with Invest to Save, call it a finance and carbon task force, to generate income for this council. This could be revenue and capital as part of the carbon programme with optimal use of solar PV. UK solar panel costs have plummeted by 70 to 90% in the last 10 years, and the payback is quicker. Win-win opportunity for greener, faster carbon reductions, income generation with the right approach. And frankly, I'm puzzled, given the parlous state of budgets across Hampshire County, why we aren't seeing this type of joined-up initiative at scale a Manhattan-style project to get even faster payback and income generation for stressed budgets. So can funding perhaps be earmarked in the strategy for this type of spend to save initiative? The Carbon Neutrality Open Forum underscored last night the need for faster district decarbonisation action. Seems to me this is an imperative. And I have some real concerns about the increased funding lines for ongoing costs of providing the food waste collection service plus other provision. Can I ask for, following similar concerns raised in scrutiny, that we really now are more clear about the cost of this programme? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Godfrey, you want to make some comments as well?
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I continue to agree with the portfolio holder, and I'm sure I would have agreed with him if he had found his notes as well. But the uncertainty about local government finance remains. With the Chancellor's budget statement at the end of October setting out little of a substantive nature that can be banked or planned on. As a result, the budget for next year in the Council will be largely unchanged. And I do not think that now is a time to make a wholesale change to spending plans based on a single year over which there is even the slightest certainty. However, the very real danger of a financial cliff edge for this Council in 2 years' time remains. It is very unlikely that new homes bonus or business rates or government grants will find their way to Winchester after the local government settlement plans are announced. So the importance of a TC25 savings of £3 million per annum must be delivered. This ambitious 3-year programme to deliver these savings retains my support. I understand the difficulties that delivering it will face, but the savings must be made. We are now 20 months since the programme started, and £607,000 per annum savings were taken after year 1. Only another £250,000 per annum further savings have been identified in this report. And there are no plans to cut costs by sharing any more services with other local authorities. I cannot see where the next £2.2 million per annum savings can be identified over the next 16 months. How does this Cabinet intend to achieve this next big step? One way would be to stop committing more recurring expenditure. There's more budget to be applied for the annual cost of a new food waste service, for better homelessness support, to cover reduced planning fee income, increased spend on property asset maintenance and reduced rental income on the investment properties, all reported in this report. While some of this is covered by reduced energy costs and other positives, this report tells us there is a significant adverse change in the Council's budget in future years. TC25 must deliver real terms reductions in expenditure, not just free up money to be spent on other admirable activities. Is TC25 really going to deliver savings, or is it just freeing up funds for the administration to spend elsewhere? Earlier this month at the full council meeting, the administration of this council made it clear that they support the tax raising agenda of the Labour government. If a council tax referendum limit, the cap on how much council tax can be raised without a public vote, if that limit is removed, will this administration follow through with a threat made in this report to raise council tax by 30% over the next couple of years? Or will the Cabinet take action now to control expenditure more effectively? Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Our medium-term financial strategy, unlike the County Council's one, I think you may have confused the two documents. The County Council quite explicitly talks about a council tax referendum or asking for special measures to enable a more than planned council tax increase. This paper does not. Anyway, Councillor Cutler.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Lee raised a number of questions, and I think most of them really associated with how we set the budget based on the assumptions in this paper rather than this paper in itself. And so certainly we'll take his views into account as we're setting the budget itself. As I started the introduction on this paper sets the scene in most cases. There are areas where we have made some commitments, such as the cost of food waste, which incidentally, Councillor Godfrey, is a legal requirement for us to do, and therefore it's not a vanity project. It is something we need to do and something we've always said we would do. And I think to suggest that we don't make provision for homelessness when the situation is clear that we need to. So it's not a question of increasing recurring costs for the for the sake of it. I think I'm very clear that, I mean, we set an ambitious target, as we heard earlier, on climate, on carbon reduction, and we've achieved it. We've set an ambitious target for TC25, and we will achieve it. You know, make no bones about it. We as an administration are determined to succeed with this. Broadly, I think many of these questions will feed into our debate on setting the budget in February, and I will take them all away and consider them as part of that process. And as we have regular meetings, Councillor Godfrey and along with Councillor Wallace from the Green Party, we will discuss those through that process.
Thank you. And as the person responsible for the council plan and the next one, I would just echo what Councillor Cutler has said. This medium-term financial strategy provides us with the framework that any plan is going to have to operate in. It essentially tells us what envelope we have in order to deliver against our priorities. The details of how the plan and the budget work together will come forward in the spring, so that the sequence we have is a very sensible one. This paper says these are the financial constraints you're under. This is the world you're operating in. The plan lays out what it is we want to achieve. The budget shows how we're going to pay for it. But if we did our planning without any reference to the financial constraints that we were under, then frankly, it wouldn't be worthy of the name. And one thing I can tell you will be in the new council plan, as it is in the current one, is a sound finances and a balanced budget. So knowing what those constraints are and what that means is absolutely critical. I'd also disagree with your characterization of there being no reference to biodiversity and the nature emergency in this paper. It talks about quite explicitly in the same sentence that it talks about going greener faster. It talks about environmental resilience. Last night at the CNAP, you were told about the investment programs that are happening that relate to nature recovery and the use of nature-based solutions to achieve our objectives. And of course, we continue to drive behind our biodiversity action plan. And the local plan that Councillor Porter has just highlighted also directly addresses all of those points. Anyway, moving on to questions from Cabinet. So, colleagues, are there any questions from colleagues about the details of the medium-term financial strategy? I know we've all had a chance to read it, and most of us were at scrutiny and heard the points made there. Any questions? Councillor Porter.
It's just when I read it, I was very conscious that we are waiting for the government announcement of this year's financial statement for the money for 25-26. Have you got any indication of when that's likely to come forward?
I believe that they intend to announce it before Christmas. That has, I don't think it's ever gone beyond Christmas, so we
We've had
will have
Christmas
the
Eve.
time in January. We do take advice and take soundings and so those assumptions aren't just us plucking them out of the air. It seems likely that, you know, there will be a sort of rollover similar to other years, but we can't be absolutely sure. We're assuming there will be a rollover for that first year. I don't know if Mrs. Keys wants to add anything to that.
Thank you. Yes, I'm expecting the settlement that we received this December to be very similar to the previous couple of years. But the government have made indications that the long-awaited reset of local government funding is more likely now, something that they're looking at. So I would imagine in 12 months' time, we could be sitting here waiting for a very different outcome.
There was one question of clarity at scrutiny that, although it doesn't appear on the minutes, was around the rates pooling. And I wondered if you could perhaps describe, just outline what that's about, given that it is a recommendation here, and I haven't raised it up to now.
Yeah, I committed a scrutiny committee to talk to Councillor Lee in detail about the pooling for business rates. But essentially, it is partnership working between our authority, several other districts, and the county council to pool our business rates locally. And instead of some of that funding being transferred to central government, it can be retained locally and shared between the authorities in the pool for investment locally. So we have made an indication to government that we would like to create that pool locally to retain that investment, and details of that will emerge in the new year when hopefully we'll be given the green light to go ahead with that.
Just so that we've clarified it and it's on the record, my reading of this paper says that there's absolutely, firstly, our only assumption that we've made is a 3% council tax increase at the most. Have I understood that correctly?
Yes, in the appendix showing the table for medium-term financial strategy, the top 4 or 5 lines, I think, are the various assumptions we make, and we make the assumption that the council tax will be increased to the 3% limit across the piece. There's also assumptions on inflation and contractual inflation that underpin the report or the strategy. So that's the assumption we're making at the moment. Obviously, it's a decision for full council at the budget, but we're not making any. We don't need an increase above that to balance the budget for the next couple of years.
Thank you, Anne. Yes.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, just to pick up, Councillor Godfrey mentioned about proposals or threats within the paper to increase above that. There's no plan at the moment for us to make any increase above that. But I do make a comment where I'm talking about the scale of the challenge that we face as a council. And I do equate the size of the budget gap to an increase in council tax. But just to clarify, there's no proposal or threat within the paper that is a measure that we're looking to take. We're looking to address it through the TC25 programme.
I think that's the key point, which is that the TC25 programme is designed so that we are able to keep our council tax at 3%. That's the way that this budget is constructed, and there are other options. So, for example, as I think some may know, the Hampshire County Council medium-term financial strategy was signed off a week ago, and explicitly makes reference to asking the government for exceptional financial support, which will enable them to have a much higher council tax increase than the 5% referendum limit. And if they're not able to get that permission from government, then they talk about the option of a council tax referendum in 2025 or 2026. So if we had thought that we might want a higher increase, I think we would have put that into the paper. And indeed, recently we've normally had one of the lowest council taxes increases anywhere in Hampshire, and kept it below inflation. And that's certainly, from my point of view, what I would be seeking to achieve on the district council tax. Are there any other questions? Is there any debate? Councillor Nerney.
Thank you, Leader. Looking at a couple of the issues that were brought up by councillors, I think it is important to say that our council plan does have to fit with the budget as well as the other way around. So it is absolutely an iterative process. The county council are still working on their local nature recovery strategy, and I think we will need more information before including any implications in the budget, although I do think it will be principally a local plan issue for this authority rather than a significant additional burden. We do have an ongoing programme looking at solar opportunities for revenue generation, but we are a council which owns relatively little non-operational land, and most of that is already being managed for nature and would be inappropriate for large-scale solar. We already have panels on many of our own buildings and are actively seeking opportunities on the roofs of businesses within the district, which would be revenue generating for this council. Although, because of the way the finances work, actually, we've already had instances where us highlighting the benefits of solar on their roofs has led to businesses investing themselves rather than us making that investment and taking a financial benefit. But within the context of our climate emergency priority, obviously that is a good thing, and also means that we have potentially more resources to use elsewhere where businesses may not have the capital to do that. I do welcome very much this paper, which I think confirms the view of the peer review about this being a financially well managed council. As throughout the local government sector, we do face considerable challenges following years of government restricting funding. But despite this, we are projecting a balanced budget and have significantly reduced the long-term financial gap we inherited when we took over in 2019. So I would like to thank officers for their work, not only on this paper, but over many years.
Thank you, Councillor Nerney. Very well put. Any other debate? Just before we finish, I would just like to quickly make sure that we've covered any scrutiny comments. There were a set of detailed questions that were answered in the meeting, and following a proposal by Councillor Godfrey, there will be 5 of that committee will be meeting to get a briefing and discuss the TC25 programme the asset management programme in more detail, but I think it did actually make reference to TC25. Okay, there will be a member briefing on TC25, but we will provide more information. And I believe there's an adjustment to the recommendations.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, just to bring your attention to in recommendation 5, which relates to the garden waste collection, there's a typographic error in the 3rd and 4th line. It should say March 2025 instead of March 2024. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Cutler, any last comments?
Thank you, Leader. No, I don't have any extensive comments. I think I thank Councillor Nerney for her comments. The fact that we do have a very sound process here, and this, as I am emphasising, is the basis on which we produce the budget for next year, and it lays out the assumptions we will make. I think they're reasonable assumptions, and in terms of funding, and take into account the reductions so far seen from TC25, and commit to a couple of priorities that are really important. the food waste strategy particularly, and homelessness. So I think it's a sound and balanced paper, and I hope you can support the recommendations.
Thank you very much indeed. Yes, and thank you to Ms. Keys and her team as well for all the work that's gone into this, and essentially putting us in a good position despite very troubled times. I mean, it is a matter of concern that Hampshire is predicting a £182 million gross budget gap in next year. And if you look at the figures on a comparable basis, the ones we're talking about, 116 million net budget gap for 25-26, 185 budget gap for 26-27. Unlike us, they are not forecasting future years beyond that, because they have said they will be declaring Section 114 in 26-27, which essentially means they go bust, unless there is a national intervention of some kind to support their financial position. And that is something I think we need to be mindful of in terms of any extra pressures that may come our way as a result. And this is a very serious matter. I know it's a very stressful matter for everybody who works there. So I think it's very good that we have a prudent financial approach. We are also thinking of the needs of our residents and seeing how we can keep council tax down through the TC25 savings programme, while continuing to deliver for our residents the ambitious plans that we have in place and will have in place. So only to thank Ms. Keys for the very helpful view into the future, but also all the work that's been done over the years to make sure that we have these well-managed finances. We have a set of recommendations in front of us. To note the assumptions in respect of government funding, council tax, inflation rates and fees and charges, which we'll be using to set our plan and our budget. Approve the medium-term financial strategy as set out in sections 13 to 17. Approve that a detailed budget be prepared for consideration by council in February 2025 based on the assumptions in the MTFS and the final spending review announcements, and in addition and including the following options, which include extra money for food waste, our legal duties there, the extra money to cover the demand for temporary accommodation in order to prevent homelessness, the savings that have been made on energy benchmarking, the pressure on council contracts as a result of inflation and other changes such as the national insurance changes, and the increase in the garden waste budget, although with a reduction in planning fee income. And where are we? Sorry. An additional 250,000 for the property reserve, and a reduction of £500,000 reflecting estimates of future rental income on investment properties. Establishing a risk reserve of £1 million for homelessness prevention. Approve maintaining the concessionary price of garden waste collection of £29, but increasing the prices for small and large bin collections with effect from March 2025. Approving a capital budget of up to £190,000 to enable a grant of development contributions under Section 106 to Wycombe Parish Council for a replacement pavilion at Wycombe Recreation Ground, and noting the council's application to participate in Hampshire Business Rates Pool for 25-26. So that's a long set of recommendations. Cabinet, are you agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Westwood, would you like to introduce the
Sorry,
Councillor
my
Becker.
apologies. I should have mentioned this with the
declaration of interests at the beginning of the meeting, I, as usual, have a interest in the following paper, so I will leave the room.
Thank you, Councillor Becker. So Councillor Westwood, once Councillor Becker has left the room, can you introduce the HRA business plan and budget options?
Thank you, Leader. The budget for the previous financial year of 2024-25 was set against a background of high interest rates and designed to tackle inflationary pressures. CPI inflation has since fallen and reached 1.7% at September 2024, below the Bank of England's target of 2%. However, this does not mean that costs have fallen. It means that the pace of increase has slowed down, and key cost drivers to the HRA, such as energy and building materials, continue to remain significantly high. And added to that, the news over the last couple of days that inflation has now gone back up again, and the energy price cap has also increased, will add further strain onto the finances. The main cost pressures come from the following 5 areas. Continuing inflationary building supply and construction pressures, which are now baked in and continue to increase broadly in line with inflation in 2024-25. Secondly, the capital costs of maintaining the existing housing stock at Decent Homes standard. The increased cost of repairs and maintenance following the determination earlier in the year found the cumulative RPI had not been applied in line with contract requirements. This increase is combined with increasing demand for repairs and is driving an increase in repair and maintenance costs of around £1.1 million per annum. Thirdly, capital financing. Interest rates are a key cost driver in the HRA business plan, and as of the 31st of March 2024, the HRA had a capital financing requirement of £215 million, with a proportion of this debt needing to be refinanced over the next 15 years. Interest on borrowing remains high and is not expected to decrease significantly in the near term. Fourthly, new homes viability. Stubbornly high public works loan board interest rates also mean that new homes viability remains challenging. As a result of the ongoing high costs, the council has followed a strategy of acquisition, and as a result has been able to add to its housing supply between 2024 and 2027 through targeted acquisitions and acquisitions of S106 affordable homes. Fifth point, looking at the revenue side, the council must set its rents in line with the rent standard and central government regulators of social housing's rent setting guidelines. The current base of rent setting is CPI plus 1% for 2025-26. The budget options in this report support the council's commitment to increase investment in customers' homes to go greener faster, to deliver 1,000 new homes programme by 2032-33, and to deliver an improved customer service and experience for repairs and maintenance. If no action were taken to address these pressures, there would be insufficient resources within the business plan to deliver a balanced budget over the 30-year planning period, whilst also delivering against our policy objectives. A savings target of £2 million per annum has been established to mitigate the pressures outlined above, and officers have been meeting on a regular basis during the year to identify and quantify potential opportunities. In addition, we will maintain our approach to service charges, that those who use the service pay for it, but we will dampen any increase in service charges increases where they're above a specific amount. To achieve these policy objectives and set a viable and sustainable HRA business plan, the budget options identified for consideration will be further developed and will be subject to consultation with customers. In addition, these budget options have been reviewed by the TACT Board and their feedback will be taken into consideration. The TACT Board were broadly supportive of all proposed actions. The proposed options following development and consultation will be decided by Cabinet when the Housing Revenue Account budget is considered in February 2025. And I do hope this is a paper you can all support.
Thank you very much indeed. We have two councillors who wish to say something about this paper. Councillor Lee, would you like to come forward?
Thank you, Chair. Just to repeat and recap some of the items raised and comments at scrutiny. Clearly, we understand the HRE is facing significant financial stress, as we just heard, and the resolve to deliver on the statutory focus to achieve EPC-C, decent homes and higher housing numbers, as said in scrutiny, is welcome and noted. But can I ask is, what is the big TC 2025 efficiency idea for the housing programme to secure sustainable buildings of the future? We must embrace change faster. I'm seeing lots of ideas, but not the big idea. A suggestion, for what it's worth, is to invest to save with what I call performance sensors during upgrades as a forward-thinking approach that improves operational efficiency, enhances occupant satisfaction, aligns with sustainability trends and management of our housing stock. Especially important for digitising decarbonisation efforts, tracking energy use patterns, fabric performance to highlight inefficiencies and suggest improvements. BRE, for example, has a suite of products, pulse counting sensors, Zigbee IR, occupancy detectors, and so on. This may be a small invest to save cost, but with major benefits in order to help reducing utility bills. So can I ask if this approach can be considered in our housing business plan and perhaps part of the re-procurement of the repair maintenance contract? On the viability adjustments, concerns about this shift from in-house construction to purchasing homes from developers under Section 106 to mitigate inflationary cost pressures. This is worrying. This approach, I believe, is and can create big issues for energy efficiency downstream. This approach limits the council's control over design and sustainability specs in acquired units. And I just see our 5 new dedicated retrofit officers having to work harder in the future to fix a large number of problems. We know this is a universal problem in the housing sector. So as we know, EPC targets focus on the quality of the fabric and surface of our building. They do not measure operational energy use. And I'm sorry to regurgitate what I've said before, but the issue of energy performance gap, the difference between predicted energy performance of a building as estimated by the EPC and its actual energy consumption in practice is real. Many buildings don't perform to the EPC rating, resulting in high energy bills and carbon emissions. So can I ask, how are we going to avoid future environmental and housing quality issues for this universal problem? And finally, on debt management, the council's dependence on borrowing to fund new builds and refurbishment presents risks, as has been stated, particularly the high cost of public work landlord borrowing. The strategy to use internal borrowing offers short-term relief, but external borrowing will likely remain necessary for long-term objectives, such as mentioned, the 1,000 new homes by 2032-33. And of course, we continuously monitor the interest rate trends, which is essential to ensure refinancing strategies remain cost-effective. And the reliance on rent increases underscores the need for external funding or grants to support the long-term viability of new builds and retrofits. But I'd be grateful for clarification as to what the strategy will be to deal with any future increases in interest rates or lack of grants. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. And Councillor Horrell, would you like to come forward?
Good morning, and can I, for the record, congratulate the officers in getting the local plan submitted last week. That was a huge achievement, and none of us, I'm sure, wanted a developer-led local plan, so well done to everyone. Chair, thank you for allowing me to address Cabinet this morning. And the reality is that the Conservative group is in support of the delivery of our outstanding council housing and communities. I'm personally passionate about one of the most important areas of the council's work. We want to agree with the majority of plans for this crucial area of the council's work. In the current climate, the development and availability of new homes is absolutely crucial. Winchester is an extremely expensive area, and therefore we must do our part in providing affordable homes for those residents who are not able to access the broader market. However, this paper leaves a lot of areas without detail, with assumptions unsubstantiated, and your assumption, I think, that the majority of us will take it on the nod that you're doing the right thing. At scrutiny last week, questions were asked and data requested, but I'm not aware that some of that has come forward since that meeting, which is a shame. Last year, you promised in the equivalent of this paper to unravel the issue of our sewerage plants and the cost allocations. This paper does not provide the clarity of that issue and the next steps for council tenants and homeowners of ex-council properties. You also said you would provide the clarity about the service charges for our residents, but I am unable to see the detail in this paper. I asked for clarity at scrutiny, but I'm still unable to see that data. I want to make sure that the allocations are fair for all residents and that in these difficult times we are not adding to the pressure on our council tenants. And I'm really not sure why this is not possible. You're indicating a level of expenditure to ensure we have homes of a decent standard, which is excellent. But it seems we do not have up-to-date stock condition data about our homes, and it will take over 2 years to gather that new information. How can this budget, when you know so little about our homes, be accurate? Why is this not a risk in section 10? Would it not be better practice to include it as such? At scrutiny, you said the Housing Board had agreed the budget options. I think the reality is that they haven't actually been able to scrutinise the budget in huge detail. We've only had one formal meeting and had a very top line look at the HRA budget. I'm sure that board has more work to do, and I think it would be fair to allow them to take that step. You are changing strategy in housing, and particularly in this budget, based on the pressures you have estimated. And I think that's a reasonable approach. But the reality is you're not taking tenants and opposition parties with you, which is a huge sadness, when this area of the council's work needs us all to hold hands and support one plan. For example, new build projects have disappeared from the project list without sharing the details of the criteria upon which those decisions have been made. I'm sure we would all like to understand better why that has happened. And again, the details of the service charges are not visible. I'm sure that work must have been done in the last year for this budget to be put together. And I do hope that some of this information can be made available so that we can do, as I advocated a moment ago, hold hands and support one plan for outstanding council housing and communities in the Winchester district. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Horrell. Councillor Westwood, would you like to respond to the questions?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Right, first of all, turning to Councillor Lee's questions. So TC 25 for housing was something that was brought up at scrutiny, and brought it up again today. TC housing, in terms of the efficiency savings and effectiveness of what we do, is actually baked into the business process that we follow. So as an example, the HRA budget is revised on an annual basis. It has to be balanced over a 30-year period. So efficiency savings are embedded in this budgetary process that we're talking about today. And as an example, this year we're facing a roughly £2 million funding gap and are in the process of closing that gap. We talked about the general account earlier, and the comments around where are the savings coming from, identifying them. We are identifying the savings now and making those savings. And these savings are not a one-off saving. These are savings that roll through from year to year to year. So they're ongoing savings. Our investment in the retrofit of our existing properties is delivering more sustainable homes. You know, that is having an impact and will have an impact on future funding requirements as we go forwards. And the retendering of the repairs and maintenance contract gives us huge opportunity for further savings through the introduction of more electronic and digitisation in terms of our dealings with our customers, through improved information on the stock as we upgrade it and so on, which will be available for use and analysis as we go forwards, and that will help us to further reduce savings. So I would counter that TC25 for housing is in place, is embedded, and is working at the moment. In terms of viability and the cost of moving to a construction, from construction to purchasing, and your concerns around EPC and measuring the value. We do not want to sit on our hands and not deliver new affordable housing just because the pricing of building and building our own homes is not viable at the moment. It would be wrong not to address the waiting list that we have on Hampshire Home Choice, the demand for affordable housing right across the district. Therefore, we need to do something. Therefore, we are moving down the most cost-effective route for delivering those new homes. There is a price to be paid, you're quite right, in that when we purchase from developers, there are certain constraints that we have around the design and the energy efficiency of those homes. But I can assure you that the homes that we are purchasing do meet or exceed building standards, do conform to the local plan. And as and when we move forwards with the new local plan and the LETI standards, it will be a requirement that builders meet those levels as well. In addition, we do pricing where it's viable, additional features such as the use of non-use of boilers and use of heat pumps and so on. And that is the position in when we talk about the Kings Barton acquisition later in this meeting on that paper. So we do build in additional capability in that space, and we'd look very firmly at it. You talked about embedding sensors and so on into the buildings. I absolutely agree that that is the route forwards, and you know, we all at the moment you can access your oven from your smartphone. You can access your fridge from your smartphone. It would be fantastic to be able to access any set of data from sensors within buildings. Our retrofit program changes its scope as technology changes and as it becomes available. And I see no reason why we shouldn't be considering that as options going forwards. It's not in place today, as you know and I know, but we do tailor that program for. And I'll give you an example on retrofit is that the price for solar panels and batteries is falling significantly. So, you know, they are now coming back into scope because they contribute to be able to deliver a better outcome for the homes as opposed to just the pure fabric upgrade. And in terms of debt management and dealing with any future rises, we have to produce a balanced plan. We have got significant loans at the moment, and we'll be taking further loans out to manage our new homes acquisition program as laid out to meet our 1,000 homes target. And that is baked into our plan at current interest rates. Should interest rates go up, which hopefully they won't, but if they did, we will have to review and revise our plans accordingly at that time. And we can't second guess what's going to happen in 2 years' time or 5 years' time to interest rates. So I go back to the HRA is a fluid plan that is revised on an annual basis based on the income that we can receive, the expenditure that we believe we need to make. and that we will deal with the movement in interest rates as they happen going forward. I would hope that interest rates will start reducing at a certain point in time. They've been high for a period. What's happening in the world may change that totally, of course, and none of us can predict it. But should interest rates start coming down, then that will be reflected back. That will factor into our debt. And also, if you look at the paper, we have introduced for the first time from 2033 onwards the options to repay some of our loans. Right, so we're not looking at this as a buy-to-let mortgage that you never pay off until you sell the asset. We do need to start addressing soon the repayment of these loans so we can reduce the burden of the interest rates that we are paying. And it has been introduced in this paper for the first time this year. Turn to Councillor Horrell's questions. The data from the scrutiny meetings has not been delivered yet. I am assuming that the officers will deliver that in line with the minutes of the scrutiny meeting, and that will be forthcoming. The water treatment works, no clarity. I would contest that because for two reasons. Firstly, it is covered in this paper, and secondly, you and I have had specific conversations about this. So the position with the water treatment works is that this is a problem that has been evident in the HRA long before I was a councillor. It's been in there for over 10 years as an issue that needs to be dealt with and has never been dealt with. We are now dealing with it, and so we have done significant analysis on the cost base of the water treatment works in every single one that we own, and there's over 50 treatment plants that we own. We now know the cost per connection for every home connected to these water treatment works. And there are some surprising numbers when you start looking at that level of detail. So I agreed at Cabinet Housing several months ago additional investment into several of those water treatment works to address the high cost of running those water treatments. So work has been approved and is being scheduled to upgrade 4 of those water treatment plants to reduce the operational costs. We've also introduced a new tanker, which reduces the cost for the cesspit emptying and so on. But the fact remains is that this is a complex problem to solve, and that's why it's been around for so many years. The plan is that in the next financial year, we will get to a point where we have identified and upgraded where is economically viable the plants to reduce operational costs, and we will then consult with the tenants and users and private connections, there's many private connections on there, to agree a charging mechanism that is fair and equitable to all, but will drive full cost recovery from those water treatment works. Service charges, again, you talk about no clarity. We've committed to give you the full details of those service charges at scrutiny last week, and that will be forthcoming. In there, you will see the data that you're looking for. And in terms of service charges, then the position is unchanged in that we want to move to full service charge cost recovery for any services given. There will, and it's written into this paper, be a cap this coming financial year of 5% of £5 as a maximum. And if the increase exceeds that, we will cap it at that level and recover to full cost recovery over a longer period of time. I will also add that there's an ongoing review of the service charges that we deliver, and some of this can be done through the TACT board and the consumer standards groups, and that we need to look at twofold. One, are we providing the right services, and are we providing them at the right cost? And that is a very, very important part. I get approached by residents, it's happened several times, who want to pay more service charge to us because they want better facilities. So it's not a case of cost cutting here, it's a case of providing the services that people want and delivering those at the right price. Stock condition data on houses, again, the last full stock condition survey was done in 2013. So that is predates certainly my involvement here, my position here, and goes back a long time. That's 11 years ago. The stock condition data does exist for all homes. The issue we have is that some of the data is cloned. So you may look at a home, understand its construction, understand where the asbestos is, understand, and you'll go, well, the house next door, built at the same time, same age. We'll assume that's the same. There's some assumptions in that stock data. So firstly, we need to cover those gaps. We can't make assumptions across all of the housing, and there is other areas of the stock data that we would like to enhance because we need more information about those houses nowadays than we ever did. So that is why there's a programme of work to upgrade the stock condition data. And you're right, it will take a period of time because we've got 5,500 homes out there roughly, and we need to go around those homes. Is it a risk? It is a risk that we have taken into account as we've moved forwards within this paper. You talked about the housing board, which I presume you mean TACT board, and the fact that they've approved this. They've not approved these savings targets. You're quite right. We've had one formal TACT board at which this paper and these savings areas were discussed at that board meeting. The detail was given to all the TACT board members, and there was general agreement that we were going in the right direction with these. There was nothing that they red flagged on that list, but we fully concede that we need to go through further consultation before we can come back to Cabinet in February with a full set of agreed recommendations. Further than that, and that will clearly go through the TACT board. There's a meeting in January for the TACT board, which we would hope to take more information to. But allied to that, there's significant consultation going on directly with tenants on this. So there is a survey to be sent out in the next, I believe, week or so, it's handy, to all tenants and asking for their views on this. This will also be subject to conversation at the consumer groups, which are scheduled in December as well. So I would contend that it is visible to the TACT board. They've seen it. Nobody's approved it yet because it's still being developed. And finally, savings. Can I just ask you, Councillor, just to reiterate that final point on savings? What were you looking for there? I think I missed the point of the question.
Chair, if I may, it was just a clarification on the houses that had disappeared, the projects that had disappeared from the new homes list.
Okay.
Clearly, there is a criteria that's being used for those houses to be taken off the project list at the moment. What is clarity for all of us as to how those decisions are being made? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Right, so the position there is that I've asked the officers and the new homes team to provide further clarity on every scheme that we have as a potential opportunity for new homes across the district that will deliver to our 1,000 new homes target by 2032-33. And so in that respect, every scheme has been revisited. It's been categorised as green, amber, red. So green, do we think this is a viable scheme that we can move forwards with? And amber, are there issues that we need to address? And red, well, do we think this is not a viable scheme at all going forwards? And again, I committed to you when we met that I would provide that data that sits behind those decision processes, how the decision was made and what the blockers might be. We could talk about any scheme in detail here, but that will be forthcoming and will be visible to you. And the reason I've done this is that I wanted to stop schemes just sitting there at the same status the whole time and everybody going, why is Dykes Farm not moved forwards? Right? But I want that clarity. Dyke Farm is going to be a red site because of specific reasons, and we will all understand that reasons, and it just stops that repeat questioning on that. Therefore, we presented at the last Cabinet Committee Housing, the new homes update, those schemes that we saw in the plan that were green schemes that would drive us towards our 2032 target of 1,000 homes. And I added it up the other day, and I think we've now identified with what we've delivered, what we're talking about at the moment in terms of acquisition of new homes, schemes that we can see that we're fairly comfortable with and think we can land. We're looking at something like 647 of our 1,000 homes identified through that route already, and you know, that is way before the 2032 target time. And you know, I'm very confident that this approach will allow us to have clear visibility of a pipeline of new homes opportunity from here to our 1,000 homes target that is transparent and visible to everybody. And I will make sure that comes through Cabinet Committee Housing so that it's publicly available as well. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Westwood, for a very thorough response to the questions and points raised. Cabinet, do we have any other questions? I think we've already covered quite a lot, so sure there's any other issues that we need to talk about. The one other thing that's not quite a question, but just to confirm that this was discussed at scrutiny, and the only resolution that we need to deal with, I think you've already touched on, which was that the tenant service charge information and data as referred to within the report be made available to committee members. I think you've confirmed that that's going to happen. I don't know if we have a timing on that, Mr. Handy.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, we can provide it in advance of the February Cabinet meeting, which obviously will be considering the actual service charges to be levied, if you so wish. But clearly, it will be the information that will be germane to debate about service charges at that point in time.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Any debate? Councillor Cutler and Councillor Cutler first, then Councillor Lerney. Oh, then Councillor Thompson, then Councillor Porter. Crikey.
Yeah, I just want to make a couple of comments. I mean, there were comments on TC25. TC25 is a general fund programme, but we very quickly recognised that it was important that within the HRA similar processes take place, and particularly around digitisation and customer service. We want to make sure it's integrated. So Councillor Westwood and I are on the same page about this, and we're very clear that that's the approach that will be taken. The other element that has been raised, and that's full cost recovery, and right across the Cabinet, the view on full cost recovery is where we need, and we do need full cost recovery in lots of cases, we look at the costs first. And if we can drive down the costs, it's more important to drive down the costs before we recover them. So, and that process is part of the HRA as much as it is part of the general fund. So I just wanted to make those 2 points, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Lerney.
Thank you, Leader. I'd like to welcome the continued commitment to reducing the energy usage of our existing council homes. I know progress may have seemed slow so far, but this has been to a great degree because we've been working with tenants rather than imposing measures on them, as well as working not only to avoid the energy gap referred to by Councillor Lee, but to ensure that we avoid and deal with damp and ventilation issues in our homes at the same time. I do understand the concerns about purchasing off-the-shelf homes, but these homes will be built anyway. And we do specify energy and carbon efficiency enhancements, which other purchasers probably wouldn't. We care about people, not just buildings, and moving forward in this way is getting residents more quickly into modern homes which are cheaper to heat and more comfortable to live in than the majority of homes in the private rental sector. And this has the additional reassurance that the council is their landlord, and we know that is much preferred to other social housing providers. So I very much welcome moving forward on this and look forward to continuing to work on the retrofit and new homes programmes.
Thank you, Councillor Lerney. Councillor Thompson.
Yes, just to thank you, Leader. Just a few comments to make. Really delighted to hear that we are really moving ahead to meeting our target of those 1,000 homes over the next 10 years. That's fantastic news that we learnt today. I really support this paper. I agree the shift from not building council houses ourselves to buying off the shelf is, you know, we would all love to be building our own council homes, but at the moment it's just not financially viable to do that. And so actually taking this shift in strategy really means that we can keep providing those vital lower cost homes for our residents, and certainly those meeting the need of those on our waiting list. And also, of course, we are dealing with the difficult issues that Councillor Westwood mentioned, one of them being the sewage treatment works. We are moving ahead with that, and that is superb news for everyone. So I thoroughly support this paper and the direction that it is going, and look forward to seeing the budget when it comes around in February. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Porter.
Thank you. I think we have to remember that we have an amazing stock of affordable homes. Something like 1 in 10 families in this district is living in one of our HRA homes, but we also, part of the importance of, we realise the importance of this, and so we've included it in the local plan to make sure that all of our larger sites bring forward a decent number of affordable homes, and those affordable homes will also be of high quality. So I think that we have to remember that this part is part of the total plan for affordable homes, and it's really encouraging to see we're being very realistic about what we're doing to make sure we get those homes delivered. And if we have to do it by buying them rather than building them, then that for me is very good. It also means that we know the quality we are buying. I think that's a very key issue. It's also very good to see that this financial plan, includes paying back that loan. I think it was when we had to take that loan out in the first case. I can't believe that you have homes in your own area that are yours, that people are living in, and then you're asked to pay the government back for them again. I think that was a true injustice at the time, which I'm really pleased that we're having to address. Well, I'm really cross we're having to address, but I'm pleased we are addressing. And it's also good to see that we are not only building new homes, but looking very, very seriously at working with our residents on retrofitting. So I'm very supportive of this paper. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Westwood, any last thoughts and comments?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I just echo what Councillor Porter just said about how lucky we are to have this portfolio of homes in the district, and I think that's a credit to every portfolio holder that's gone before me, right back to the time we actually acquired these homes and took them on board. And there's people all around me, as it happens. And you know, I happen to be the custodian of this at the moment, and you know, I'm pleased to be able to add to those homes, and I'm pleased to be able to add to the quality of life of the tenants living in those homes, which is what it's all about at the end of the day. Whether it be the thermal efficiency of the homes, or the pleasantness of the surroundings, or the behaviour of the people, which also is under my remit. So I think the budget paper you have before you allows us to continue this direction of travel, and you know, I'm pleased if you can look to support this paper today. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, well, and thank you to the whole team that's put this together. It's extremely helpful. As it highlights, we're dealing with a situation with much higher interest rates, much higher cost pressures coming through, particularly in the world of construction. And to have a plan that deals with that, and at the same time gives us more houses, cuts carbon, improves services, and keeps costs down, is something that I think we should be justifiably pleased about, because that is not just doing right for our tenants, but also doing right for the council's financial situation, for our district, for our environment. All of these things are very important. One thing we haven't talked about when we talk about new homes, and it will be covered later on the agenda, is one of the consequences of going with this purchase programme means that we establish a presence in our new communities. I think it's really important that, you know, somebody who wants to live in Whiteley is able to live in a Winchester City Council house in Whiteley. Somebody who wants to live in Kingsbarton will be able to live in a Winchester City Council house in Kingsbarton. And we're making sure that new developments and estates have a city council presence, and when people wish to live in a council home, they have more choice about where those places are. And that's something not to be exaggerated, obviously not wanting to prejudge what decision we might make later about the Kingsbarton housing, but assuming we do make that decision, then that we will certainly have housing there. So and I'm pleased that we are very clear that at a time of cost of living crisis, we will be keeping a strong focus on keeping costs down and keeping costs under control and taking that very seriously. And also the ongoing programme of cutting carbon and cutting bills through retrofit, where, you know, the ambition of our programme and the pace of our programme are both extremely important. So we have 13 recommendations in front of us today. Crikey. So we're asked to note the HRA business plan, note the business plan pressures, approve the budget options outlined within the report and detailed at Appendix 2, approve the reallocation of £250,000 from the one-off investment budget to meet actions arising from self-assessment of consumer standards compliance and service improvements identified, note the continuing strategy for new homes, note the current viability assessment for new build from paragraphs 1115 to 1125, note that the revenue savings gap of 2 million has been set to assist with bridging the forecast gap, and I'll call it CC25 even if nobody else does. Note the proposed timescale for asset disposals and that Barnes House has been considered for proposed use as temporary accommodation. Note that based on the September 2024 CPI figure of 1.7%, that the average rent formula increase for all affordable and social housing will be 2.7%. Note that the budget in October noted a consultation for future rent settlements between now and December, which indicates preference for CPI +1 for 5 years into the future, and approve the principle of this application in the business plan model. To approve continuing full cost recovery on tenant service charges, and noting that charges will generally reduce following a softening of energy prices. Note that there's an ongoing work stream on the reprocurement of the repairs and maintenance contract, which is the next item on our agenda. And note that following implementation of options, that the HRA business plan 30-year plan is viable and sustainable and has the capacity to support the council's ambitious delivery of 1,000 new affordable homes by the end of 2031-32. Cabinet, are you agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much indeed. Moving on to the next paper, we have quite a lot to cover, so I will be looking to see that we can keep things moving ahead at pace. Oh yes, thank you very much indeed. Very kind of you. Thank you very much. The next paper is housing procurement of HRA repairs and maintenance term contract. There was an excellent discussion about this at scrutiny, but it is useful to cover it again. Councillor Westwood, would you like to introduce the paper?
Thank you, Leader. Some background facts to start with. The current repairs and maintenance service, based on an annual snapshot of recent work, carries out approximately 23,000 jobs to around 5,500 homes and refurbishes around 300 void properties prior to reletting every year. Alongside the day-to-day repairs service, the council also invests around £14 million per year into the refurbishment and maintenance of the stock by renewing key building components and retrofitting various energy efficient measures. The repairs and maintenance contract with Cardo has run for around 13 years, but much has changed in that time, and it's right to review again our requirements and to understand who we can best work with to deliver to those requirements. However, we should also recognise that we are looking to improve from a good base, with our most recent survey showing that 80% of our tenants are satisfied with our repairs and maintenance service, and 78% are happy with the timeliness of our repairs and maintenance service, but we can do better. We want Winchester City Council housing to be more easy to do business with. This can, however, mean different things to different people, and the report before you shows how we have consulted to understand what that means to many different groups, including tenants, staff and members. We've also engaged with major service providers to discuss areas such as best practice, scope, delivery options, IT systems and tender documentation. Finally, we've also consulted with a number of local authorities who have undertaken a similar exercise to draw on their experiences and lessons learned. There are a number of key outcomes we want to deliver. We want a partner, not a supplier. Whoever we choose going forward will represent Winchester City Council in our tenants' homes, and they should meet and deliver to our values. Improved customer service and experience, including a strong digital offering and continuous customer feedback at all interactions. We want improved quality of service. Right first time, every time is our aspiration. Transparency and visibility, both for our tenants and importantly internally, so that we can manage the operational processes and manage the contract effectively. We want optimum cost and quality of repair, delivering value for money to the council and to our tenants. We're looking for continuous innovation to constantly improve our services and drive further value for money. And finally, we're looking for the opportunity to expand the services beyond just repairs and maintenance to possibly cover planned upgrades, retrofit activity, decarbonisation of our housing stock, voids refresh, and any other services that may be identified. The council is now undertaking activity for a new procurement to be conducted over the next 18 to 24 months to ensure a new contract can be approved by the winter of 2025, such that the selected partner can mobilise and complete all pre-contract activity over a 4 to 5 month period, ready for contract start on the 1st of August 2026. It is essential the evaluation model rewards the tenderer submitting the highest quality bid at the right price. This does not mean the lowest price. The evaluation model will avoid a race to the bottom by not rewarding the lowest price, the highest mark. The contract provides opportunities for the council to drive changes that will improve the standard of council-owned housing and the lives of residents, regenerate communities and tackle climate change. I do hope this is a paper you can all support. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I have Councillor Lee and Councillor Horrell again, so who wants to go first? Councillor Horrell this time, maybe.
Chair, thank you for allowing me to raise this specific question once again. We all know that this is a crucial contract for the council, but I have just one key point for the record. How can we procure a multi-million-pound contract when we, councillors, do not know the breakdown of our current repairs numbers, the types of repairs, locations, frequency, property type? If it does exist, why is it not visible to us? This lack of data provides a significant risk to this process. I'm sure if I were pitching for the contract, I'd want to understand such a fundamental piece of information for one of the largest contracts this council will procure. A few numbers were shared at scrutiny by the strategic director, but this was not a full and clear picture. I therefore formally ask for this information to be made available to us which I know all of us should be looking at on such an important council decision. And I'm sure the portfolio holder joins me in wanting to understand that data. And as I say, if it is available, why are we not seeing it on such a key decision? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Horrell. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I don't intend to repeat what's said at scrutiny, and some of my questions have already been answered by Councillor Westwood. I just wanted to highlight a continued concern about the need for balanced environmental key performance indicators. The 10% minimum for environmental social value criteria, I believe, is too low. And I think a more balanced triple bottom line for social, economic and environmental is, I believe, necessary. Really good news to hear that the lowest price is not what we'd be going for. And increasing comfort and environmental benefits in our housing is really important with quality of service. And I just want to pick up on the issue that I've raised with Councillor Westwood before, and that is the issue of nature-based products. Now, obviously, we know that the default position in the construction industry is price. But I believe if we can weave into our R&M contract a focus on the need to use nature-based products whenever possible, this not only just helps what I call the future climate change concerns of higher climate temperatures and higher humidity, because these products provide comfort and environmental benefits in terms of moisture control and so on. And this is not often thought about. And I think this is really important. So can I ask for that as a consideration? And the other important thing is, as we continue to deliver with our new local plan and LETI and so on, and we ramp down on operational carbon, embodied carbon becomes a bigger issue. So therefore, our selection and specification, wherever possible, of the right nature-based products will help with the embodied carbon costs, which is an environmental impact to us all. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Westwood, would you like to respond to points raised?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. First of all, for Councillor Horrell, then we did commit to provide this data at scrutiny, and it's in the minutes and it will be provided. I have had sight of that data, and it does provide a significant level of detail, shall we say, on the repairs undertaken in an annual snapshot and around the figures I've alluded to in my opening. But just to give you a flavour of it, the council's IT systems do contain information on the total number of repairs to customers' homes. They can be broken down by trade. As an example, in October 23 to October 24, there were 23,793 repairs orders raised. Of that number, 17,000 repairs were requested by our customers. The remainder were raised by our own internal teams as a result of work going on. That could be energy assessments for retrofitting, etc., etc. Statutory and requirements around boiler service maintenance and gas safety certificates and so on. So there's a lot of jobs of that in there as well. Clearly we've committed to give all that information to you, and I agree with you, and we've had this discussion between us many times, that and I've had it with the officers as well, that to manage an operational business of this size, you need operational data, and you need that operational data to make your day-to-day decisions on, and that is the position I want to get to. But I can assure you we have that breakdown of that data and it will be made available. Okay. Councillor Lee, the need for this council to drive its business to address the major points and direction of our council plan is paramount. Right? And the housing account is no different, and the procurement contract that we will procure, the partnership that we'll agree will be no different. Whoever we agree this contract with will need to deliver to the sentiment and the values of our council plan surrounding the climate emergency and the nature emergency, both of those. And I can assure you the contract that we have in place will ensure that we will evaluate responses against that council plan directive. All right, so that will be there. In terms of the KPIs, there will be KPIs related to how the selected supplier will perform against those particular areas of our council policy, and there will be measurable KPIs that demonstrate that the partner that we work with is delivering to meet the needs in both of those areas in our council plan. In terms of nature-based products, we've had this conversation many times as well. There are benefits of nature-based products, and you outlined them very clearly during your question there. But there are also drawbacks of those nature-based products. And the primary reason that we are not using, for example, nature-based products for our thermal insulation at this point in time is absolutely down to fire safety risk and safety within those homes, because the nature-based products have not been assessed to deliver the level of safety and fire retardantness that we need in those products in our homes. That is not to say we will never use them. And again, we've had this conversation many times. The team will continue to review technology as it changes and products as they change. And I would be grateful if you would keep telling me and nagging me to do this going forwards. You are closer to this than I am, but I suspect you're no closer than the Retrofit team are, because they're also very close. But I do appreciate you continually bringing this up and making sure that we're focusing on this, and it's absolutely a direction that we should be going down, because it absolutely aligns to our council plan and our new council plan going forwards in both climate and nature emergency areas. So please keep doing it. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Do we have any other questions from Cabinet? I've got one. The scrutiny committee made a reference to a breakdown by number and type of repairs currently undertaken on the housing stock being provided to committee members. Chief Executive, I assume that's going to happen, and it may be useful also. I think there was I just want to understand what we know about the current pattern of repairs will be reflected in the procurement process.
Thank you, Leader. I'll just tackle that first point, and then the director will be able to support with some particular question about patterns and the most frequently requested repair, perhaps for the benefit of committee. Absolutely, that request was made at Cabinet, and as members will guess, it's held on an Excel spreadsheet, and as Councillor Westwood has indicated, the first cut of that data has been prepared, and we will make that into a legible format and share with members. But I just wanted Cabinet to be aware that that information is not in the report today, but I would draw your attention to the recommendations which are in this report, which is about the process of procurement. Even if that data was in the report today, that wouldn't influence the recommendations that are written here, which are about the process of procurement. So, Leader, I just wanted to make that point, but I'm sure Mr. Hendy could just give a couple of highlights on the most frequently requested repairs for the service. Thank you.
No, well, thank you for clarifying that, and that is a really key point. And we are making decisions. The recommendations do relate to the process that we'll be following. I suppose it'd be helpful to understand from Mr. Hendy. Firstly, actually, there's a very immediate thing, which is how how can we use the available data for the current contract or to improve the current contract, but also what we know about the pattern of usage, and it would be useful to know if presumably that would be part of the information provision during any procurement process. But could you perhaps provide a bit more perspective on that?
Yes, thank you, Leader. As Councillor Westwood said, we have assessed information on the total number of responsive repairs which were undertaken October 23 to October 24. Councillor Westwood has already said that that total 23,793. 17,000 of those repairs were responsive repairs requested by our customers. To give you an idea, the highest number there was plumbing repairs, 5,146, but we have that information broken down in quite some detail. I'm sure you'll understand that number changes day by day. And when we go to the market, we will be providing as much information as we possibly can around the repairs requested, because obviously that will help prospective bidders refine and provide us the best possible prices for the average repair cost, if you're minded to support that as part of the report. The question was asked at scrutiny because a number before had been used of 19,000 repairs, and how did this differ? Well, there are using the example here, 17,000 responsive repairs requested by our customers. We also undertake a number of programmed works which are in effect responsive but programmed by our colleagues. So, for example, there are 151 fire alarm detector surveyed in the year and work undertaken to 76 passenger lift repairs undertaken, 98 TV aerial repairs undertaken, and 5,176 attendance in relation to heating, because you'll be aware that we assess, especially in terms of gas safety. Everyone who has a gas boiler, they receive a safety inspection to their home every year. So hopefully that gives you some comfort that we have the detail of all the work. We have the ability to provide that detail, but it will change on a day-to-day basis. And when we go to market, we'll make sure we provide as much detail as possible. We are in the process of taking the spreadsheet we've got at the moment and recasting that in as a presentable format as we possibly can for members on the back of the scrutiny meeting. We should be able to do that hopefully by the end of this week, not beginning of next week.
Thank you very much indeed. It's reassuring to know that, first of all, I think members will be able to see what the current patterns is. We can have a conversation in terms of our current service, and secondly, that it will form part of it will slot into the procurement process, which is actually what we're agreeing today. Good. Thank you very much indeed. Any other comments from colleagues? Any debate? Councillor Cutler.
Yes, I just very briefly want to strongly support this paper because, as we discussed earlier about TC25, the approach to procurement here has very strong elements of the whole process of TC25, particularly concentrating on customer service, digitisation, and contract management in the future. So I strongly support the paper.
Thank you very much indeed. Any other debate? No, well, thank you very much indeed to Councillor Westwood and Mr. Hendy's team for all the work that's gone into this. I mean, we went into it in great depth at scrutiny, where there were a lot of very good questions about what's being proposed and what's in front of us. This is incredibly important. It's the way we provide service to our tenants and the way we help ensure that our houses are, maintained and well managed over time is one of the most central things this council does. And finding the right partner to do it and having a robust process to find that partner is absolutely critical. And so the knowledge that there's a very detailed and thorough approach towards this procurement process, and what we've seen so far, both in this paper, but actually particularly when there was proper conversation with the team working on it, the scrutiny process has been very reassuring. So Cabinet, we have 7 recommendations in front of us. The fundamental one is to procure, award and enter into a contract to undertake retrofit, cyclical, planned voids and reactive works to our City Council owned properties within the parameters set out in the report and relevant delegations to the Strategic Director, to incorporate an in design a dialogue phase within the procurement procedure under the public contract regulations, to use the competitive dialogue procedure under the PCR regulations to carry out the procurement, to ensure best value, to adopt a 60-40 quality price evaluation model with a quality bias, to commission, following satisfactory completion of the procurement exercise, a term alliance contract to be awarded to a single provider for an initial term of up to 10 years with an option to extend for a further 5, to agree to evaluate tender prices using the optimum price model rather than a lowest price model, and to approve the use of a term alliance contract TAC-1 as amended form of contract for the HRA repairs and maintenance contract. Cabinet, are you agreed? Thank you very much indeed. On to the next one, which is the future of waste and recycling, new food waste collections and recycling service. Councillor Lerney, can you take us through the proposals?
Turn on. Right. Thank you, Leader. This paper seeks to confirm the introduction of weekly food waste collection for households throughout the district on a phased basis from October next year. Most people are careful not to waste food, but some waste, for example, vegetable peelings, fish bones, eggshells or coffee grounds, is unavoidable, and composting is not an option for everyone. 1/3 of the contents of an average black bin is food waste that could be recycled rather than incinerated. When fully implemented, food waste collection will provide a better service for our residents, with what can be very unpleasant food waste collected weekly rather than fortnightly, and cutting the carbon emissions of the waste collection service by around 1,900 tonnes of CO2 equivalent a year. Its introduction was supported by the extensive work done last year, which saw over 8,700 residents respond to our waste and recycling survey. Phasing as proposed will help ensure that we meet the deadline for introduction of food waste by 31st of March 2026, make it easier to deliver food waste bins and caddies in a timely way, enable recruitment and training of staff over a longer period of time, and help us achieve the benefits of food waste collection earlier. The proposal to move ID Verdi, our grounds contractors, to a new depot in Winnell creates the necessary space for the 9 food waste vehicles needed to run the service, avoiding Biffa operating over multiple sites. It also solves a number of operating issues caused by 2 organisations sharing a single depot, and as the Biffa and ID Verdi contracts run over different timescales, will give us greater flexibility when we re-tender the grounds maintenance contract in 2027. This kind of depot space is very difficult to find in Winchester, and it is fortunate that its availability fits with our timing. There have been budget increases since February involving what were, if you'd like, known unknowns, particularly depot space and estimates which have been refined, such as the cost of caddies and waste collection. The introduction of food waste collection will be the fulfilment of a long-standing commitment to residents by this administration, and I hope you'll all welcome it coming forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I have 2 councillors who wish to speak on this one, Councillor Lee and Councillor Bolton. Councillor Lee, would you like to come forward?
Thank you, Leader. Before I get to my points, I'd like to say how delighted I was to see the electrified waste collection vehicle outside the Guildhall this morning. This is really good news. And with 70% of my ward in the South Downs National Park and the recent push to re-emphasise tranquility, what a fantastic difference this non-polluting and quieter vehicle will make to my ward. So absolutely fantastic. And I look forward to the success of the electric vehicle trial and its wider rollout across the whole of the district. Getting to the points on this particular item, I've voiced my concerns about costs, and Councillor Lerney's covered that at scrutiny. And then I also mentioned at scrutiny that other value-added carbon reduction, bigger value-added carbon reduction programs are available. So my question is, if this plan is delayed, will we be able to divert this funding to faster, bigger decarbonisation programs? And I still have a residual concern about, without the local area energy plan known and the electrification program that we are pushing, I just wonder whether perhaps some of what we're trying to do is a bit too early and ambitious and perhaps premature without the knowledge with respect to how we're going to do the energy aspects for the new vehicles. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd like to add to that I was pleased to see the non-polluting vehicle out the front, right down to the smell. It's so clean that it didn't even have an odour to it, which was remarkable. I'm sure that will be soon acquired. Unfortunately, the scrutiny meeting last week was a rather unsatisfactory session in which many of the members found that the agenda was way too packed and not enough genuine scrutiny was achievable in the short time we had, leaving questions unanswered. So on reflection, I would like to get a bit of a bigger picture clarification on waste and recycling. Firstly, I think it is fair to state that most of our residents would very much like to recycle more of their waste. I think it is also clear, particularly from the extensive survey that was carried out, that residents also have a desire for as few bins as possible to be able to achieve this. As we know, Winchester is a collection authority and the county is a disposal authority. Hampshire County Council disposes of waste and recycling on behalf of some 11 districts and also Portsmouth and Southampton. This is a vast and complicated undertaking for the County Council, particularly because virtually all the districts collect their waste and recycling in slightly different ways, and in some cases, very different ways. It is my understanding that these different methods of collection and a failure to reach a consensus across the district collection authorities is the main reason for the delays in the county's ability to build a new MRF at Eastleigh to the required specification to meet the needs of the county overall. Given that our residents just want a waste and recycling service that is simple in collection yet extensive in the items it recycles and that works well, rather than allow this complex issue to be turned into a party political football and finger pointing exercise, what is the administration doing to work with the other districts and HCC to deliver a coherent way forward across the county? Can you also clarify if there are any undisclosed costs that could emerge if the disposal of waste and recycling is different to the one that is contemplated by the proposed method of collection so far, e.g. if different types of collection vans are ultimately required? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Lerney.
It'd be helpful if some of our members of staff come forward. We have Campbell and Kirsten here to assist. If we look first at Councillor Lee's questions around if we could delay this, would we be able to put the money towards other things? I mean, we would have 9 food waste collection vehicles which would be sitting idle, as the order has already gone in for those, and we are anticipating that they will arrive in the middle of next year, prior to us starting the phased rollout of this. In addition, we do anticipate that the majority of the costs of this service will be met through new burdens funding. If there is a delay to the introduction, then it's likely there will be a corresponding delay to government funding. I don't know if officers would like to expand on that.
Thank you, Councillor Lerney. Yeah, we're still awaiting the news on the government's funding on food waste and on extended producer responsibility. But as you rightly say, the food waste trucks have been ordered and are due to arrive in the middle of next year in order so that we can get the programme started and start making the largest impact on carbon emissions.
Thank you. I'd also like to say that if anything, we've delayed the introduction of food waste, awaiting government funding for this. So it's not something that, as an administration, we would want to roll back on, particularly in terms of the gains. Maybe there are other carbon reduction programs that we could look at, and I'd appreciate a greater understanding of what those might be. But we do know that we want to do a wide range of different things to reduce carbon. This is one of them, which will be introduced at some point in any case. There may be others we can look at, but I would say that actually introducing this next October is likely to be faster than most of the other carbon reduction programmes if we were starting afresh from now. In terms of looking at the proposed collection system across the county, and what county might say about that, I think it's important to say that food waste effectively sits to one side. It won't be dealt with through the new MRF. It will go through the transfer stations but be taken elsewhere. So it's not dependent on new county infrastructure. The districts have been working together in terms of looking at what we would like to do, and did present the county council with our desired collection system, which would involve having glass collected in the recycling bin alongside cardboard, pots, tubs and trays, and so on, which would actually lead to us having the same number of waste receptacles as we'd be able to get rid of the glass crates, which is one of the reasons why that's advantageous. Again, I'll ask Campbell, who's been involved with most of the discussions and negotiations about this, to expand a bit on how we're working with the other districts.
Yes, thank you. As Councillor Learney mentioned, earlier in the year we did identify that the preferred option for all the district and borough authorities was the co-collection of glass in with the recycling, which would mean that we'd be able to reduce the number of bins to make this simpler for the residents. And that was something that was set out as a suitable collection system by the previous government earlier in the year, and we're now awaiting the county councils, Portsmouth and Southampton, as the waste disposal authorities that we work with, their view on what their preferred option is for this. But we're also awaiting a review by the Minister of some of the decisions the previous government made, which is in part delaying the county councils, Portsmouth and Southampton's decisions on moving this forward. But we're keen to move forward. I think, as has been mentioned, we did a very large survey of residents in Winchester last year. And there was very overwhelming support for the introduction of pots, tubs, trays and cartons, and that's something that we're keen to do as soon as we can.
I think that's picked up the main points that were made. I don't know if the officers picked up anything else that they'd like to say in response.
Thank you, Councillor Learney. Are there any other questions from Cabinet colleagues? Councillor Porter.
Thank you. A number of anaerobic digesters are being constructed around our district, not owned by state, but by private organisations. Are we going to be using those to dispose of this food waste, or are we going to be taking to specifically ones that are being shared with other districts?
So the process, as we understand it, is we would take the food waste, collect it from each household on a weekly basis, and take it to one of the transfer stations where that material is bulked up. And currently for us, that's mainly in Otterbourne on Poles Lane, where it be bulked up and taken to an anaerobic digestion facility. The County Council's view as the Waste Disposal Authority is there's currently enough commercial anaerobic digestion facilities that it would be looking to set up deals with to cope with the volume of material which we and the other 13 collection authorities, including Portsmouth and Southampton, would be dealing with.
Councillor Cutler.
Yeah, I just have a question about obviously with food waste, we are not only implementing what we have always said we wanted to implement, but we're also covering reaching our legal position where there is this legal responsibility to introduce food waste. What is the risk to us about the fact that because of Hampshire Council for not making the decision and being unable to collect pots, tubs and trays, therefore we can't meet our legal responsibility to collect it because the disposal authority has failed? Are there any implications for us in that respect?
Yes, potentially financial. I'll ask officers to go through that.
Yes, so some of them are still uncertain. So the county council have written to DEFRA to say that they're unlikely to have the disposal infrastructure in place to enable the new types of recycling. However, there is due to be an announcement this month by the government on the indicative amount we would get from the extended producer responsibility scheme, which would see packaging producers pay for the full cost of recycling and disposing of packaging. As part of that, there is a long-term penalty, if you like, if you don't deliver an efficient and effective recycling system. Now, we don't know exactly what that is yet, but as Councillor Lerny said, there are potentially some penalties embodied within that legislation to mean that if we don't improve the types of recycling and don't reach good levels, that there could be a penalty on that money we receive. But we don't know how much that would be yet and what that would affect.
Thank you very much. Councillor Becker.
Thank you. I apologise in advance. It's a very parochial matter, but I know it will be raised with me by the residents of Winnhill if I don't ask it. It's just a plea really to make sure we provide for parking or transport for the IDV workers at the Winnhill site, because parking is such an issue in Winnhill, where places such as the Winnhill Flats car park is often used by those who don't actually live there. So just a plea that we make sure that that is provided at the site, please.
Hiya, just to give you some comfort that we've actually the site that we're looking to secure comes with additional parking space at the back, and that was something we were very clear on, making sure that those who work there will have somewhere to park their vehicles so that it doesn't impact residents in the area.
Thank you. Councillor Porter.
Thank you. We managed to fit the other one in. We're very conscious, and I'm really pleased this is going to go in phases, and we've already had the transfer of dates because people are just getting used to their new days. So that's great. It doesn't add confusion. It's really well planned. But we are also conscious, and I know that came out in the survey, that many people don't have doorstep collection. And this is something that is going to be looked at separately. Are you going to be phasing that within the phases, or taking that as a separate, a whole separate programme? We want to make sure the people that live in the flats particularly get a good deal out of this.
So people who live in flats or communal properties are as much part of residents as we would expect. So we would look to roll this out, and the way we would do it is in rounds. So a particular area, and we would look to do everyone in that particular area. And one of the reasons for doing it in phases is because we can learn from what happens in one area compares to, and we can learn from that and move that on. So the intention is very much that we would involve flats and communal properties as we roll that out as an integral part of the process.
Residents will be very encouraged by that.
Yeah, I think it's important to add that we've already done a lot of research looking at the existing bin provision and the space provided by bins in communal properties across the district. We also, as part of the survey that we did, asked people what kind of property they lived in, and asked whether we could get in touch with them again if we needed to ask further questions. So one of the things we will be doing around the communal property piece is getting back in touch with those people who said they were happy to be contacted, and doing a bit more work about what will work for them. But absolutely, we are very conscious of the fact that the rollout to communal properties is likely to be tougher than through the rest of the population. So it's something that we're concentrating quite hard on.
Thank you very much indeed. Chief Executive, were there any points raised at scrutiny?
Thank you, Leader. Yes, the Scrutiny Committee had opportunity to review this report last week, but for Cabinet's information, there was, as listed in this report, a member briefing earlier in November, which enabled members to ask all and every question in a safe but of course confidential space. And the Scrutiny Committee did see a report which recommended the purchase of the electric vehicles and an update on the waste system and the new proposals in June this year. And of course, the HEP Committee, Environment Committee, reviewed the paper in January. So there has been significant opportunity for members to engage in this subject over the past few months, as it's a critical service for our members. The report indicates that any updates from scrutiny would be reported at this meeting. And of course, Councillor Lerner, you were at that meeting. You've set out the introduction that you did last week. And Councillor Lee, you've raised the same points that you raised at scrutiny last week and put them in front of Cabinet today. And members, you have on your table the notes of scrutiny, which sought clarification on the increase of costs since February. There was a conversation about the use of HVO at scrutiny and the depot use, which you've already addressed today, and the use of the Winnell site, which you've also addressed today, and a particular question around the communication strategy, which of course will be critical for the effective rollout of this service following the operational changes we're making at the moment around changes to bin rounds to prepare for that service. So there were no resolutions made from that committee last week, but there was opportunity for debate there, chaired by Councillor Brooks, of course, excellent as ever. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Chief Executive. Yes, I'm surprised at the characterisation of the last scrutiny meeting. Obviously, it's one where the Conservative chair controls the agenda. So if there's a problem there, it sits with them and not with the administration. But actually, I thought she and her vice chair, I can't believe he's here, did an excellent job of thorough scrutiny on all the policy papers and decision papers that were brought to them. I thought it was a very good meeting and also ran at quite a pace as well. So I would be in the camp of actually congratulating the chair of scrutiny for a well-run meeting. Is there any debate on this paper? I'm not gazing at you particularly, Councillor, so just to force you to say something.
I just think it's exciting. I think it's amazing, exciting. I do recycle my food into a hot box. It's very satisfactory, but there are some things that you just don't think necessarily you're going to put in that hot box. And I already have a separate bag. My family know they can't put a pot tub or tray into the recycling. I actually am very almost anal about this problem, but the fact that we're actually going to be able to put our food waste into a bin and then also recognise actually how much food people are wasting and we are wasting, and I put myself in that category too. You do it unintentionally. I think it will help not only our recycling rates, it'll help our carbon footprint, but it'll also help individuals to improve their carbon footprint as well, and also hopefully their purse. That's great.
Thank you, Councillor Westwood.
Thank you, Leader. Just to my £6 to this, putting my ward councillor hat on, when I go around and talk to people on the doors, this is the #1 thing that I get asked for time and time and time again. And I'm delighted that we're able to have the new vehicle up front and bring this paper today. And I think this is something that the majority of my residents will be delighted to see happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Any last words, Councillor Lerner?
No, I'd just like to thank fellow councillors for their support on this. As Councillor Porter says, I think it is very exciting to be able to move forward, and we've already done such a lot of work on this, and I think the effectiveness of what we've done has shown up in how smoothly the new waste rounds were introduced, with obviously a few hiccups. It would be wrong to say it was perfect, but certainly moving forward, I have every confidence that officers and councillors working together will implement this very successfully, and we look forward to seeing those recycling figures head up towards top level performance rather than lagging behind as we are at the moment.
Indeed, thank you very much indeed, Councillor Lerner. Yes, since taking control, we've introduced glass collections, battery collections, electrical appliance collections. We've improved our garden waste collections with a dramatic amount increase in the amount that's being collected. We've started collecting cartons at Bring sites, and we're seeing it through in the numbers. And it's good to know that we will be continuing as fast as is prudent and financeable to move to roll out food waste collections. We took the decision, I think, during the pre-election period in March 2024 that we were going to move at, shall we say, pragmatic at pace, but pragmatically to make sure that we got the necessary level of government funding. I share the frustration that was touched on by others at the delay at the County Council in terms of being able to move forward with their recycling facilities. To be fair to them, it is because they would say the government has not provided sufficient clarity as to what might be permitted in order to finalise the design. And I can reassure Councillor Bolton that frustration from the districts at the pace of county and government progress on this is shared across leaders of all parties without exception. There is real frustration, and generally I would say the districts are being as helpful as they can possibly be in terms of making sure that they put in place options that will enable the county to implement, frankly, whatever they are able to agree with government. The districts, particularly those most interested in recycling, and again they are from all parties, are doing whatever they can to be ready for whatever is provided. And I think it's just the frustration of the delay, which does sit with Hampshire, is partly a consequence of their financial position, because I think if they were more financially comfortable, they'd be happy to adopt a slightly higher risk profile, and a delay in government decision making, both under the last government and under this one. So hopefully that will soon be resolved, and we will continue our progress towards ever higher levels of recycling and an ever better service to residents. The paper in front of us today is an important step in that, and also has a huge number of recommendations. Okay, so we have 9 recommendations in front of us today. We need to find a way of having fewer recommendations. So we are agreeing to implement the new food waste collection and recycling service in line with the requirements of simpler recycling through BIFA at a cost of £1.6 million a year. We're approving additional baseline budget of £211,000 for the ongoing cost of the food waste service, in addition to the previously agreed figure in 2024, February 2024. We're agreeing to start from October 2025 on a phased rollout basis, with a forecast cost of £457,000 in 25-26, which with an additional one-off budget of £317,000 funded by the Major Investment Reserve, agreeing the additional baseline budget of £105,000 per annum from 25-26 in order to relocate the depot, agreeing to vary the contract with BIFA to include food waste collections, agreeing to increase the capital budget to be funded by borrowing to allow for the additional costs as outlined in Appendix 1, agreeing to procure the required bins and caddies in order necessary to start food waste collections with appropriate delegation to the Strategic Director and the Cabinet Member for Climate Change, agreeing authority to incur expenditure of up up to 853,000 for identified revenue costs and up to 604,000 for identified capital costs, as in Appendix 1, and authority to agree the detail of the new food waste service delegated to the Strategic Director in consultation with the Cabinet member for the climate emergency. Cabinet, are you agreed?
Agreed.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. On to acquisition of affordable homes at Kings Barton. Councillor Westwood, you are earning your allowances today. Would you like to introduce the paper?
Thank you, Leader. First of all, I'm absolutely delighted to introduce this paper, and I thank the officers for all the work they've done on this to bring to life the strategy that we outlined in last year's budget paper of purchasing affordable homes to achieve our 1,000 home target. And this is a great example of the direction of travel and the outcome that we're looking for. So this paper seeks approval for the allocation and expenditure of new build unallocated capital budget as set out in the confidential appendix for this report to purchase land and 146 new affordable properties at Kings Barton, Winchester. The council has been successful in securing these homes in a competitive process against other interested registered providers. The proposed new housing forms part of a much larger multi-phase development by Carla at Barton Farm in Winchester. Outline planning consent for the scheme was granted on appeal by the council as local planning authority in 2011. The section 106 for the outline planning consent required a proportion of new homes to be provided as affordable. These are integrated throughout the scheme and phases in accordance with the planning consent. Acquiring section 106 allocations in this way is currently a far more cost-effective method for the council to deliver new homes compared to direct build. This approach to housing delivery is a more efficient use of in-house resources and means that delivery can be at scale compared to direct development of small council-owned sites. External expert advice from Savills has been taken on the price that has been agreed and on the structure of the deal. The development includes a range of affordable properties types and sizes for a mixture of affordable rent and shared ownership. The new homes will be built to building regulation energy efficiency standards, but with the addition of air source heat pumps, thus supporting the greener, faster council plan priority. As set out in the confidential appendix, the proposed purchase meets the council's approved viability tests and is based on 51 shared ownership properties and for the remaining 95 affordable rents set at LHA rents. There's a strong demand for new affordable housing in this location. Kings Barton is a significant site in relative proximity to Winchester city centre, where a large proportion of applicants wish to be housed. Housing register numbers have grown in recent years across all property types, highlighting a continued need for delivery of accommodation intended for providing rented accommodation allocated by Hampshire Home Choice. The delivery of these units at Kings Barton will assist the council in satisfying demand on the housing register and provide suitable homes meeting applicants' assessed bedroom needs. The currently anticipated timescales show practical completion dates over 3 phases, delivering in financial years 25-26 through to 27-28. TACT has been consulted upon the allocation of funds from the New Homes Capital Programme and support the council providing new affordable homes throughout the Winchester district and are in support of this specific proposal. I do hope this is a paper you can all support. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I have Mr. Tate, who wishes to say a few words in public participation. Can you come forward and make your comments?
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to address Cabinet. When the Council recommenced its building programme of new council houses around 10 years ago, I always thought it was the intention to increase the total number of affordable houses being built in the Winchester district. The commitment by the council to build 1,000 new homes, affordable homes, is commendable. And the intentions behind this, the council purchasing 146 units, not 147 as stated in the HRA paper, on Kings Barton, is one from a financial perspective makes sense, although I'm obviously not party to all the confidential financials. However, all that this action achieves is to shift the ownership away from a registered provider to the council. So it won't increase the total number of affordable houses in the district, just alter who owns them. Carla would have had to have found an RP to take those homes, irrespective of whether the council purchased them or not. So all it's doing is avoiding Carla negotiating with an RP. I'm a fan of Carla, so I've no criticism of them. I have to say, on a personal note, it always seems a bit ironic to me that I was the only councillor who voted to approve the Barton Farm planning application, with my express justification being it was the only meaningful way at the time of Winchester seeing proper numbers of affordable houses being built. The council has already been purchasing homes in North Whiteley for the same reasons as this recommendation. And again, it's just shifting ownership from an RP to the council. I cannot recall how many times I've argued that the council should have been buying land so that it could build its own, as I describe it, 21st century council estate. And I remain firmly of the view, and my sadness here is not criticism of the paper the officers have worked up, but it's not increasing the quantity of desperately needed affordable homes within the Winchester district, just altering the ownership of that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Tate. And we also have Councillor Lee and Councillor Horrell. I don't know which way. Councillor Lee leapt to his feet first, so we will let him go first.
Thank you, Leader. Obviously, increasing the quantity of affordable homes in the district is much welcomed. So I have one quick question, which pick up on what I've said previously. Can we inculcate into the acquisition agreement a post-occupancy energy performance assessment agreement for the seller to fix any possible energy performance gaps that might arise? I think it's really important we avoid and reduce any future burden of remediation on this council and our housing staff, and any discomfort and inconvenience in the future to future tenants in these affordable homes. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And Councillor Horrell.
Chair, thank you for allowing me to speak again. As I already mentioned this morning, in the current climate, the development and availability of new homes, affordable homes, is absolutely crucial. Winchester is a very expensive area, and we must do our part in providing affordable homes for those residents who are not able to access the broader market. It is crucial that we ensure that the purchase of new homes to fulfil our ambitious affordable homes target, which the Conservative group supports, is conducted in a positive way and does not lead us to additional expense in the future. Buying from developers is proving to be cheaper than building for ourselves because of the buying power and scale of national building companies. Carla, as the builders on the Kings Barton estate, must ensure that the homes purchased for council residents are of an equal standard to any houses that they are building for full market sale. Any discrepancy at this early stage will not help build community cohesiveness and will also lead to potential issues in terms of the upkeep of buildings in the future. We all want to ensure that when we see a door, we cannot tell the difference between a council house and one that has been purchased. It is crucial that we build in these requirements to any purchase deal and do not leave it to chance. I've heard that happen on other MDAs where we thought we had a particular layout and suddenly things were different. So I hope that the Cabinet will and officers will ensure that this is part of the contract that we strike with the building company. And I hope that you will agree that this is not an unreasonable position to take. It is important that the specification of the homes is to the highest possible standard in terms of fittings. Councillor Lee has already mentioned the heating systems, and to ensure that we have the best possible quality homes. Pepper potting is also important, and that the homes we intend to purchase are not just put in one particular part of the site, and that we use that technique, which has proven a better way of integrating our council homes with those that are purchased. We need to ensure that residents on the housing register are offered a new home they can afford, and that the council ensures it is constructed to an excellent build quality. Our homes in Stanmore, if we look at them, for example, have been an amazing investment. Just making the target is not the objective. We want decent homes for tens of years to come, just like those on Stanmore, and that we still ensure that it is a quality investment for this council for the lifetime of the HRA plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Horrell. Councillor Westwood, would you like to respond to the points made?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Okay, first of all, to Mr. Tate's comments. Yes, I understand that we are buying affordable homes, but we bought these in competition with a registered provider, and clearly the registered provider was not in a position to move forwards with these homes. We also, as a council, have a commitment to provide more council homes, because we need to address the demand on the Hampshire Home Choice list. And you know as well as I do, Mr. Tate, that that's quite an extensive list, and the list doesn't seem to get any shorter. So it's only right that we provide more affordable council homes, and that's central to our policies within the HRA. To address your point about we're sort of eating away at the number of affordable homes that the registered provider, not increasing the numbers, I do wear another hat, and that is around responsible for the housing strategy for the district. And part of that housing strategy, which was debated in this council last year, is to run, develop, manage and drive a registered providers forum. So we are already doing that, and we are already discussing in consultation and working with registered providers to build more affordable housing and within and to generate more affordable housing within this area. So working with both the developers and the registered providers, and you know, it's got to be through many different methods that we achieve delivering the houses that people need, and delivering them into being available through Hampshire Home Choice as council houses is a very favourable route forwards. You know, I again go back to my ward hat. I meet people who are in council homes. I meet people who are in registered providers' homes, and the council homes are sought after. And I think it's only right that we continue to expand the availability of them. In terms of the 21st century council estate, I'd hear your views. I have a different view, which is I'd like to see affordable housing in amongst just general areas as opposed to a block. But the local plan, as we've heard today, has been successfully moved forward. there will be a refresh of that local plan close on its heels, and you absolutely have the ability and opportunity to put a different view into that local plan as and when we embark on the new local plan going forwards. Councillor Lee, energy performance, gaps assessments, and you talked about perhaps needing to go back for remediation on the properties. I've already talked about sensors and so on in an earlier response. We're not building these homes. We have not specified in these homes that sort of technology. What we have done is to acquire homes that are being built above the minimum building standard and deliver energy effectiveness and efficiency sufficient that we could introduce air source heat pumps into those homes. In terms of the quality of the build of those homes, and this kind of addresses a point that Councillor Hall raised as well, those homes will be, the build of them will be overseen by our clerk of works. We will be checking those homes on a regular basis, and we will only accept every individual home when it's been built to a quality that we specified in our contract and that we agree with, and that those homes have been built and delivered in line with all relevant planning requirements. So I don't believe that these new homes will require remediation in the short to medium term. As technology changes, I can't tell you what life will be like in 30 years' time. We may have to go back, who knows? But the homes we're buying are exceeding building standard levels and are having non-fossil fuel energy in them, and are homes that are fit for purpose at this point in time, and I believe for many years to come. Councillor Hall, you talked about ensuring that there's no difference between a council-owned home and a non-council-owned home, and my heart says yes, that's where we should be. But I'm also realistic in that we need to provide homes that we can afford to buy, and it is without doubt that there will be some specification differences between the homes we're buying and the general market homes. Now, that could be the quality of the kitchen that's put in there, or the way the bathroom is configured and wet rooms and all the rest of it. But I can assure you that I do not want to buy substandard homes. I don't want to buy homes that I look at and think that's a council home, right? And I'm not in that space, and I will do what I can and what I need to do as portfolio holder to ensure that the homes that we buy, as opposed to the homes that we build, are not substandard and look substandard and feel substandard to any other homes that sit around them. I agree with your point about pepper potting them, and in this particular development, then we're kind of restricted by the planning permissions that have been given long ago as to where the homes are going to be positioned. But we are buying in 3 phases. They will be in 3 different locations, so there won't be one block of 146 homes altogether within the development. And yes, in terms of the quality of the investment, I think I've answered that in terms of dealing with the councillor's question. We will ensure that these are quality homes, and we will ensure that they're built in a way that we can take ownership of them, and there will be no issues with those homes once we take ownership. And that is the job of Caroline and her team to be sure that that happens on the delivery. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Actually, I believe that social homes are normally built to a higher standard than market homes. The specs are slightly more restrictive, I believe. Mr. Hendy, you're nodding your head.
Yes, Leader, they can be, because obviously these are homes that we want to maintain over a period of time. That maintenance cost will be to us. I know Caroline will have greater detail in terms of the difference in the specification between the speculative housing that will be developed there as opposed to the affordable house. But ordinarily, registered providers do try and make sure that they invest up front to reduce ongoing maintenance costs of homes.
Thank you. I don't know if Zegan, you have any perspective on that?
In terms of an improved standard, they certainly potentially have higher space standards, so that's very
That's
positive.
what I was referring to.
Yeah, and also just a few points there to pick up on. So just to, clarify that we are speaking really closely with our housing colleagues. We collaborate a lot with them, and they will ultimately be the department that takes it over and manages those homes. So I work really closely with them to make sure that the homes that are being built for us are a standard and a management, and don't become a management headache for them. So we make sure those discussions happen.
And of course, I would say if you go to there was a reference earlier to our estates like Stanmore, you can tell which the council houses are because they're better than the other ones in terms of their roofs, windows, doors, maintenance generally. Anyway, colleagues, are there any questions to this paper? Councillor Learning.
Thank you. Those of us who attend the Kings Barton Forum will be very aware of very valid concerns raised around whether Carla will meet its section 106 and 278 planning commitments and the closeness to various trigger points. As someone who cycles over the site regularly, there are a lot of foundations going in at the moment without any visible progress on Winchester Avenue in particular. Is there any planning risk attached to this purchase?
Okay, so to try and answer that, I'm sure my officer colleagues will back me up with any additional information. We should ensure that the development achieves the planning obligations so that our tenants can enjoy what has been consented and the value of the homes is maintained just as any other landlord would, and do that via the planning process. So it is a planning process that we need to ensure has been adhered to, which you already alluded to.
And the contract will ensure that whatever we're purchasing is in line with planning consent. So that's how we address it through the sale, land agreement and build agreement.
It might be helpful, I don't know, Mrs. Adey, if you can provide some perspective on because this whole question of making sure that obviously that Carla fulfil their obligations under the City Council section 106, but also we have a strong interest that they fulfil their obligations under the County Council section 106. But I believe that sits, it's very much our belief that the right way to handle it is through the planning team. Can you provide any perspective on that?
Yes, thank you. With regards to the development of the site, we meet with Carla regularly at senior level to make sure we're following not only the detail of the planning process, but the spirit of the planning process, and make sure that we're discussing what should be coming forwards, when it's coming forwards, how it's coming forwards. And obviously, if anything is going to change from the outline planning permission, that's discussed in full there as well. We also meet with our Hampshire colleagues regularly with regards to the movement strategy generally, and this site, the Hampshire colleagues come to our forum for us, the chair of which I think is here today. So we also make sure we publicly discuss at the forum as well.
Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, and I think residents need to know that this council takes the delivery of community facilities and infrastructure extremely seriously, and will continue to put what pressure we can on the process to ensure that it's delivered at pace and to the standards that current residents and in future our tenants deserve. And it will certainly be something I will take a personal interest in. And if there's anything we need to do to arm twist other organisations to keep moving at pace, I will always be happy to do that. The other question, any other questions? The other question that I think is apposite, which I think Councillor Westwood touched on, which I'd like to just know more about, which is this is a new world, where we are buying from another developer lots of houses. Now, actually, the situation in Whiteley was different because it was an additionality arrangement, and so these were net extra affordable houses that wouldn't have existed if we hadn't come to that arrangement with with the developer there. This is slightly different. This is section 106. It's a skill that we need anyway in-house, even when we're doing our own construction in terms of management of that process. But what changes have we made to reflect this is a new area of activity that we need to be good at to make sure that building standards are to a high standard, and that when we take over homes after they're finished, they are houses we're happy to hand over to our residents for the long term.
So we factored into our appraisals the need to employ an external employer's agent and potentially clerk of works. We'll definitely have a clerk of works. We're just deciding whether that's internal or external. So we're putting extra cost into this because we recognise that we really need to ensure that the build is appropriate to standard, to planning, etc. And we don't want to be paying capital over to Carla unless that's the case. So we haven't always had such a high level of external consultant involvement. So that's something that we've done differently this time and made sure we factored that cost in.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Westwood.
Yeah, can I just add to that, Leader, that for Kings Barton, the approach that Caroline has outlined will be monitored through the regular operational management meetings. But in addition, the progress will also be picked up at Cabinet Committee Housing, where there's a regular new homes programme update, so that this is transparent and visible.
Thank you very much indeed. Are there any other questions? Do people have any questions that need to be taken in exempt, and would either of the councillors that made deputations or presentations want to make any comments in exempt? I do have a question that needs to be an exempt session, unfortunately. So I would propose that we move into exempt session. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Cutler. Sorry. Do we agree to move into exempt? Yeah. Good. So we're now going to move into exempt session. This means that we will shortly stop broadcasting the meeting while we discuss an issue or two. And unfortunately, any members of the public present do have to leave the room. We will come back afterwards, and it probably won't be more than about 5 or 10 minutes. But there is something I just want to clarify. Good. Can you stop the broadcast? end exempt. Thank you. Welcome back. We've had a discussion about an exempt paper at the end, which talks about the detailed finances of the programme. We can now move to debate, if there is any, although I think we've talked about. Councillor Porter.
I was going to say location, location, location in this situation. It's really good to see 146 council homes in North Winchester. It's really welcome. We haven't had a quantity of homes for council tenants for some time, this figure. This purchase actually, I think, brings certainty to the delivery dates agreed, and that will enable those triggers to be satisfied, actually, in many cases for us. So it's a really positive thing that we know those houses are properties that are going to have purchasers, in the sense of homes that are going to have purchasers. So it is actually going to add to our conversations about the speed of delivery and triggers, because we know the dates those triggers will be set. So I think it's a very positive thing, actually, not just for the homes here, but potentially for the whole site of Kings Park.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Porter. Any other debate? Right. Well, unsurprisingly, I fully support this. Thank you for all the work that's gone into it. I think it's a really useful step forward. I'm very keen to have council houses in all our major areas of new development, so that people have lots of choice about where they can live, and that that every new community also has the option for people to be council tenants there. We've had some questions that we wanted to address. I think they've been very helpfully answered. We have a couple of recommendations. So there is, we had a discussion in exempt, although there was a reference to it in the non-exempt part of the paper, about what exactly the rent is. In paragraph 2.3 of the paper, there's a reference to rent being set at 70% market rent. In his introduction to the paper, Councillor Westwood talked about set at LHA rents. Councillor Westwood was right, and the paper is wrong in that respect. So I would like it minuted that any reference to 70% of market rents, rents being set at 70% of market rents, should be changed to say that we set at LHA rents. So any reference in the public or exempt papers needs to be changed that, and if that could be minuted. And then in terms of the recommendations, we have two recommendations: to approve the allocation and expenditure of new builder unallocated capital budget as set out in the confidential appendix to purchase land and 146 new affordable properties at Kings Barton, Winchester, and to authorise the corporate head of asset management in consultation with the Section 151 officer to negotiate and agree terms and conditions of the transaction, enter into a land agreement, a build agreement to acquire land and 146 homes to be built on that land from Carla Management Limited for the purchase price as set out in the confidential appendix, and enter into any planning and or legal agreements required to purchase the land 146 homes. Cabinet, are you agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much indeed. And on to the last substantive paper of the day, the Q2 finance and performance monitoring. Councillor Cutler, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you, Leader. This is the second quarterly report in the new format, where each of the themes of the council plan and also regeneration and growth are reported with three sections: delivery highlights, the projects within each theme, and the KPIs. And then we also have the financial report for both the general fund and the HRA. I think Cabinet should note that there are in this paper, as it's evolved, improved footnotes on some of the KPIs, and particularly a response to requests from scrutiny at the previous meeting on the Q1 report regarding fly tipping and the frequency of or the speed of clearance, which clarifies the situation and the development of the KPI for that. So I'm happy to answer any questions, although each individual cabinet member will presumably be able to answer on their own sections.
Indeed, thank you very much indeed. But before we get to that, we have councillors Wallisley and Bolton. I don't know who wants to go first. Councillor Wallace. Good afternoon. Right, just wanted to make a few points. Obviously, there was no, unfortunately, this quarter there was no opportunity or for a review by scrutiny. There was a meeting scheduled, but the meeting agenda was large, and this item wasn't. It wasn't possible to cover this item within that agenda. It is important that scrutiny does. The role of scrutiny is there to ensure that key decisions and service performance is reviewed and acts as a democratic check and balance on decision making. So it is unfortunate that this one this hasn't happened for this quarter's data. I don't want to, this isn't the right forum to dig into details going through that. That really should be done at scrutiny, but there were a few issues that I just wanted to raise questions on. One I'm sure is a simple answer that I've missed, and that is on the new homes. When did we change the target for 1,000 new homes by 2030 to 1,000 new homes by 2032? I'm sure that's been announced at some point, and I probably just need that explained to me again. Thank you. But the other issue I really wanted to raise was concerned about how we use the red, amber, greens on our reports, because I appreciate Councillor Cutler's comments that this is a new reporting format, but there does seem to be some inconsistency across the report. For example, on the council CNAP status, the administration's confirmed that it's not going to achieve its goal to get to net zero this year. So surely this data should be red. It's currently showing as amber. On the district CNAP status, I'm not sure I understand the amber status. Is the district on track to reach net zero by 2030, which is the aim? Future of waste and recycling, not sure I understand the amber status on the timeline. The project, as we talked about earlier, is delayed by, parts of the project are delayed by at least a year. So surely this should be red. And on the same project, on the costs, project recurring costs for the food waste recycling have increased by 20%, and one-off costs have increased by £500,000. How bad do cost overruns need to be before this is marked red? So there's just some examples. The classification of projects is important, because otherwise we're not only fooling ourselves but also our residents. So I think going forward it would be really good to understand, to get some more consistency in that. Thank you. A green sandwich, as you say, Councillor Bolton. Although what is green on the outside, blue on the inside? I can't imagine what sandwich that is.
Sounds
but anyway,
terribly sour, doesn't it?
Yes, it doesn't.
And speaking of sour, two small nibbles at the same sour cherry, if I may, Chair. As I have already stated, the scrutiny meeting was rather unsatisfactory last week, in which many of the members found that the agenda was way too packed and not enough genuine scrutiny was achievable in the short time we had. In the case of the agenda item on performance, it was not covered at all, as we ran out of time. Case in point, the council's performance scrutiny is very important and is the point where the rubber hits the road for the council's activities. That's assuming we are measuring the right KPIs, which remain an ongoing pressure to improve on from many members of the council. It is unacceptable to allow scrutiny agenda to be to be so overcrowded that it results in this vital oversight process to be omitted entirely. Can I request that item 13 is removed from today's agenda and sent back to scrutiny for comment, and that your assurance is given that serious consideration will be given to restructuring the scrutiny agenda to ensure that members of that committee can do their jobs effectively? You can try to blame the chair for this, but as we all know, Councillor Brooke and Councillor Wallace did push back on this and were told that alternative time was not available. This is not satisfactory in my view. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. And Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I'm delighted to be a part of any sandwich, whatever the flavour. Yeah, just to continue the comments from Councillor Butler, improvements in the paper are welcome. Some of the points I'm going to raise, I would have raised at scrutiny, so forgive me for that. So can I ask very quickly if there will be a future performance management KPI improvement exercise with members to continue the improvements? I think we could add some value. On page 238, there is reference to a piece of work about an SLA with Hampshire County Council for emergency planning. Can I ask for careful consideration to be given, I think is what is going to be an ELB paper about the landline switch off in January 2027. I have raised this before. This needs to be considered carefully. Contacting blue light services during blackouts, particularly in those poor communication areas with lack of mobile coverage, is a concern for a number of residents. So I'm not sure I'm seeing what the solution is, and hopefully maybe in that briefing paper that will be forthcoming. Green Economic Development Strategy Action Plan 2024 to 27 is finalised, noted. 6 low carbon assessments carried out with the Winchester district based businesses. Around another of green business grants has been launched, page 254. Can I ask how many of these assessments were from outside the city boundaries and where were they located? I can't see the information. And that's just to pick up on a bit on the points made by Councillor Wallace. Is it possible when we look at TCE 1 and 2, can we have actual percentages achieved against the actual net zero targets? I believe that would be clearer. And then a question about deliver program of retrofit carbon reduction measures to our housing stock. Great, I think that's obviously very welcome and should be there. But I wonder if that could be broken down by typologies for greater clarity. I think that certainly would provide more information to members and other readers. And then finally, there's a investigation into provision of a natural burial area at the cemetery. Councillor Becker, I think, is the lead. What actually does this mean? Which cemetery? Why not all cemeteries? I have one of my parishes is quite interested in this approach, and obviously there's, I think, growing interest for this environmental friendly end of life service. So thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Cutler.
Okay, there's quite a lot in there, particularly from Councillor Lee, who always fires lots of questions, and it's quite difficult to take them all down. In terms of Councillor Wallace's comments about the and the general comments about the unsuitability, the fact that scrutiny was unable to scrutinise this paper, I also was very not happy about it, simply because I was there for the whole meeting and waiting for this paper. But it is, as the leader has pointed out, the responsibility of the chair of scrutiny, along with the vice chair, to organise the agenda and the meetings. But it was a good meeting for scrutiny of everything else. So, I mean, I'm not criticising the scrutiny committee. I'm just saying management of the agenda is the responsibility of the chair. Councillor Wallace mentioned his concerns about the red, amber, green quite happy to look at that, but he has to remember, of course, that the things he commented on it was for the Q2 report, and the Q2 report was to the end of September. So the position to perhaps change given the results that we've been given, although I wouldn't say that 96%, reaching 96% was not hitting the target. It's getting very, very close, and to go as far as to call it red would be quite extreme anyway. I was looking at Councillor Bolton raised yet again KPIs, and we have made it very clear that with the new council plan, we will be looking at more effective KPIs to go into this report. But I think the process of the report and some development, as with the fly tipping clearance rates, we have addressed. But a wholesale look at the KPIs needs to go with the council plan. In terms of the SLA emergency planning, I think that's something for the chief executive, who's a bit of an expert on that. I'll just say I'm sure Councillor Becker would be happy to come in on it. But with natural burial, we're talking about cemeteries that are in the control of the council. Most of those out in the district are in the control of the parishes or the churches, and so it's their responsibility to deal with that.
Just to jump in there, we actually only have one active cemetery that is controlled by this council, the one up on Morn Hill. So that is why it's only in relation to one cemetery. We are looking at ways to encourage burials up there because it is being underutilised at the moment, and we know natural burials are a very popular option. So seeking to use it as much as possible.
Would that be a nature-based solution by any chance?
I think any burial is really a nature-based solution if you break it down.
There was one other question that I didn't pick up, which was the new homes target of 1,000, which I believe has become a rolling target that we keep moving out. So because we continually want to achieve 1,000 over the 10-year period as it rolls forward. But Councillor West would probably clarify that if I'm wrong with that.
Yeah, the target was changed in the budget for 24-25 at agreed for cabinet and then signed off at council. And the reason for changing it was purely the impact of inflation on the HRA. Remember, inflation was up at 11-12%. And the massive increase in loan costs and a need to refinance, and it wouldn't have been achievable to have a balanced HRA last year by keeping the 2030 date. So it was agreed to move the date to 2032 with the proviso that when the economic climate changes, and it hasn't changed enough yet, we would look to bring that date back to an earlier date than 2032.
Right, thank you very much indeed. Oh, and there was Chief Executive, if you have any perspective on the emergency planning. And actually, since the categorisation of red, amber, green sits with officers rather than cabinet members marking their own homework, it'd be useful to know how that's done.
Okay, thank you, Leader. Very happy to assist. First of all, members, I'm really very pleased that across the board that members are pleased with this new, more sharper focused performance report, and all credit to our policy team who managed this process for us. The report is constructed from the key council priorities, and cabinet members, as you know, you have worked with your lead officers to determine the best set of activities that are created from the service plans that we produce every year to represent progress towards those key priorities. And the red, amber, green status are it's really quite a simple RAG indication. If it is green, we anticipate with the current level of resources and activity and focus we are giving that activity, it will be completed by its target date. If it is amber, we need to do a little bit more focus on that, and there will be a matter which we are discussing with you as cabinet members as to the relative priority of the activity. If it is red, then that we do need to look at reallocating resource, time, effort, capability to the project, again in negotiation with you, because this is merely a selection from the service plans that are on the list. And the important work of the council is that it dynamically reviews and it dynamically delivers dependent on the current economic, financial, social climate in the district which we ask. So the red, amber, green is an indication of likely success at the end of the timeline, and we produce it quarterly because it gives us a good indication. On to the SLA with the, one more, and therefore KPIs, as members know, we have a suite of KPIs and we focus them over the year. And there was an opportunity for members to comment on the KPIs before our policy team took care of that work and presented it to you. But as the leader has said, with any new council plan, it will be appropriate to choose a selection of KPIs that reflect the outcomes that you determine within our council plan. There will of course be some merit in keeping some of the existing ones because that will provide a useful time series, but there may be other elements that we need to look at. So that will be a piece of work that will be undertaken as it is every year, and the new KPIs will be determined within the new financial year. So they will be agreed at that May cabinet. And Leader, you specifically asked me about the SLA for emergency planning, and thank you for saying I'm an expert on that. But there are many experts in the room for emergency planning. Emergency planning, we're a category 1 responder, as with our colleagues in the county council, but members will be aware that the county council is undertaking a review of their activity, and they've indicated to us that they will be withdrawing some additional support they provide to all districts over the coming year. So the SLA work is considering whether we are able to we fill that gap ourselves, or do we, as some districts are, buy it from our other unitary colleagues in Southampton and Portsmouth, or as other districts are, go into a partnership and buy additional resource. We're actually really blessed with our capability at emergency planning, and Simon Houghton sitting in the back and is far too modest to say so, but he is our man on point for emergency planning. So at the moment our working assumption is we'll be able to handle that gap from the county council changing their provision. And Councillor Lee, you have talked about broadband and telephone connectivity before, and I know that Simon Houghton has provided you an answer to that before. If there's still a query on that, then please do pick that up with Simon. But the point about the SLA is our general capability to provide emergency response, which we do very effectively if there's a need as a tier 1 category responder. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much indeed. What I'm now going to do, just so it's a vaguely structured conversation, is we'll go very quickly through each section, but I suspect there are a couple where we've talked at inordinate length about them today, where I'd be quite surprised if we were to stop and have a look. So the first one is tackling the climate emergency and creating a greener district. We had a member briefing on this last night. We've just had a big discussion about future waste and recycling. Does anybody have any questions? I will glare at you if you do. No, I mean, we have talked about this at length today. Second section is living well, and of course there are no reds there for a quick check-in, and there is a red there on the average time taken to process new housing benefit claims. So I don't know if we want to just provide a little bit of perspective on that. Ms. Keys, is that with you? There is a footnote. We can look at the footnote.
I think if members, if we just give Ms. Keys a chance to look, if we review the footnote, you can see that we are just over a day late on that delivery. So although it's red, because it is indeed red, it is a very minor fail there. But you can see there that's because we've been requested by the DWP to undertake other mission critical work, which has caused the team to be redeployed. We fully anticipate that to be back to green by the next quarter. Thank you.
I think if we look back to the quarter, the previous year, it went up in that quarter as well. So presumably it's that DWP work that causes the problem.
Okay, that's useful perspective, and it's reassuring to hear that we expect it to be back to green by the next meeting. Is there anything else in the living well section to touch on? Homes for all, some great achievement there, and we've again had a fairly hefty discussion about that today. Are there any points there that there's a reference to void relets? And that's extra safety work, as I understand. That's what the report says. So I don't think there's any particular question there. That's just we're having to do extra work. That comes back to actually what was being talked about knowing the status of each house. So rather than going, it's this type of house, therefore these problems are there to be dealt with, we actually have to check now and really understand if there are any safety issues such as asbestos, rather than just assuming based on what other houses are like. Number 4, vibrant economy. Any questions or comments on that? Number 5, your services, your voice. Do you want to comment on the red, Councillor Cutler?
I will comment on the red. TC25, as you know, is a challenging target, and the projects to enable the full savings are sort of longer term. So the original plan to reduce baseline budget by the end of 2025 is probably not achievable. But what has actually happened, of course, is that because of the overrun, the not getting the government settlement in the 3-year settlement in place and the fair funding review, our MTFS has actually gone out another year as well. So we do have the time to make the progress on digitisation that we expect, and actually to take slightly longer on it is probably likely to be more effective in terms of the results. I think that would be a fair. I think it will be a question mark of whether we sort of continue with that target when we go into a further year, because I think it is unlikely to be achieved, and we may need to reset the targets.
Any other comments or questions on that your services, your voice part of the agenda? Then we have regeneration and growth. And there's a red there on the movement strategy to do with budget. Does that relate presumably to the fact that the county, who are a critical partner, have completely run out of money?
Yes, although given that costings suggest that we've got an £80 million programme attached to the WMS, and a couple of £1 million worth of budget says that we will be red for a long time.
And I think there's no shame in having ambition for what we're trying to do, but it does suggest that prioritisation is going to be quite important, and maybe having a picture of that coming back at some point would be quite useful. Any other comments on that section? Again, we've had an MTFS discussion, so I think the finance section probably both for housing and for doesn't throw up too many questions, unless you want to confess something.
I think the reality is that these were the figures that fed into the MTFS, and so we've already debated the consequences of those figures. If there are any questions, I'm sure Mrs. Keys or I can answer, but I don't think there's likely to be anything specific.
I'm reluctant to hold the meeting up, but I noticed the disabled facilities grant. The total budget for a year is 1.23, and the quarter 1, quarter 2 is 0.96 million. And I know that we've put some more money in for next year, I think, but do we have any comments to make on that?
Thank you. Yes, so the disabled facilities grant is a very popular grant, and we are exceeding, our expenditure is exceeding our income, and I have a paper going to, well, a presentation going to Economy and Housing next week, with proposals to bring that back into line with a view to bringing the paper to Cabinet Housing or Cabinet, can't quite remember, in February to try and align these budgets. We are well aware of the issue, and the direction of travel is to target the money on the most needy.
Really welcome that. That'd be a really welcome study, actually. Thank you.
Thank you for highlighting that, because I think that's a useful thing to bring forward and discuss. There was a discussion, there was a request slightly, so we've now made it all the way through. Any other questions? Debate? Any last words on the subject, Councillor Cutler?
I don't think so. No, the comment that this improved report seems to be very, very welcome. I mean, you reiterate that, but it's been said several times. And thank you, Simon, for the work that you've done on it.
And also I would say the very good content therein, and thank you to officers for all the work that is reflected in that report, and as said to Mr. Howson for all his work to pull it together and put it in such a easily digestible form. There was a proposal that we don't agree the recommendation from Councillor Bolton, but it doesn't because scrutiny hasn't discussed it. But we are just noting the progress and endorsing the contents of the report, and I'm not sure that scrutiny would change that recommendation. If they choose to look at it and then use it to inform their work programme, then that's entirely a matter for them. And I think we do need to clarify. I mean, the chair of scrutiny is a very responsible role. If I understand correctly, it gets the same allowance as a cabinet member, and is treated as of similar stature and importance within the organisation. And I would stress that scrutiny is responsible for its agenda, and the policy committees, are responsible for their agendas. And I'm very pleased that the three chairs, under the terms of the new constitution, met recently to talk about how they can better coordinate their activities. But I would stress it is their activities, and scrutiny is incredibly important. I know the council has supported with extra scrutiny training. It sounds like that need to continue to support improvement in scrutiny remains, and maybe needs to be reflected in the council plan. We will also make sure that the comments made on the decisions made by the chairs of the various scrutiny and policy committees are forwarded onto them for their consideration. So, Cabinet, the recommendation in front of us is to note our progress in Q2 and endorse the contents of the report. Are you happy to do that? Thank you very much indeed. The next item of business, which I don't think we have anybody speaking on, is to note the forward plan of key decisions. Are you happy to note that? We have an exempt minute of the last meeting, and which we would need to go into exempt if we're going to ask any questions about it and discuss it. It's a minute, so I don't think we do. Are we happy to agree that minute? And are you happy, just to confirm, I think we probably did this earlier, to note the contents of the exempt appendix, just in case, even if it just gets written into the minutes a bit earlier? Yeah, good. Thank you very much indeed. At that point, I think we've reached the end of the meeting. Thank you all very much indeed for your participation. Thank you to visiting councillors and the public for their input. And thank you to the officers for the huge amount of work that we've had in front of us today. And also, as we started right at the beginning of the meeting, doing so, and actually at the end as well, doing so in a context of fantastic delivery, an amazing reduction in carbon, the delivery of the local plan, the driving ahead with new council houses, finding ways to improve how we recycle and how we maintain and repair our housing, and doing so in a way where the numbers add up, something that